name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond.
James.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy.
As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Hello and welcome to episode number 96 of James Bond Radio. This week, as you may have predicted if you listened to episode 95, we are concluding our review of For Your Eyes Only. My name's Tom Sears and I'm joined by my good buddy Chris Wright. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
Lovely stuff. Now, are you excited to conclude our For Your Eyes Onlyness today?
I am indeed. It was a joy getting back to it last time because it'd been a while. It'd been a while for sure.
For both of us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for both of us indeed. And I think the first half was really solid. I was really impressed with it. And I think the second half is not bad either. So lots to discuss. Looking forward to it.
I think my like I said last time, I'd not watched For Your Eyes Only for a long time because I'd watched it so much as a kid. And then on revisiting it, because it's always one I've put on the shelf and sort of it's not been my first choice for a Roger film. It feels like a bit of a rediscovered or a sort of, for me, a bit of a forgotten Bond film in a sense, purely because I purposefully didn't watch it for so long. And the more I think about it, the more I think about certain scenes and stuff like that, the higher it's going up in my estimations. And that's the beautiful thing about Bond, isn't it? Because, if I said to you, Chris, what's your top 10 Bond films? It would probably change from week to week, wouldn't it, if I asked you that, and it would be the same for me as well.
Yeah.
So I think, for me, For Your Eyes Only is rapidly ascending my master list of Bond films based on rediscovering it for the podcast. So yeah, I'm digging it in a big way. It's good.
Yeah. I think pretty much a lot of the films as well, because we haven't seen them for a while, when we do, you suddenly see all these sort of little bits, oh my God, that's so good. And I think whatever film we're reviewing, it's like whatever Bond is playing Bond is the best Bond at that time. Whatever film we're reviewing is pretty much one of the best films because you're involved in it, aren't you? Kind of enveloped in the world of that film, and they're all bangers. So
yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. So we're recording this one a little bit earlier than we usually would because you're off on your holidays again, aren't you? You're going to France to do some snowboarding again, aren't you?
I am indeed, yeah. Fingers crossed the snow will be good. And obviously by the time this airs, hopefully I might get some photos or some videos. I remember I had one when I was on some snowy hills in Wales and someone had put the Majesty's music to it or something like that. So I'll see if I can get something a little bit better this time.
Very nice.
But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Cool stuff. Well, I've put together a little impromptu Spectre meetup because basically what's happening is they're putting, over here in the States at least, they're putting Spectre back on the big screen for 1 week because it's like really close to hitting $200 million at the box office. So they brought it back for 1 week and it's like buy one, get one free. So I thought, well, let's show some support for old Eon and Spectre in general really, and go and buy some tickets and like help out the cause. And I thought it would be a good chance to meet some LA based JBR listeners as well. So there's a little crew of us going tonight to go and watch Spectre again for the last time. So it'll be my 007th viewing of Spectre. I'm very excited about it.
Do you know how many of you are going? Is it like
only a small group? It was a bit of a last minute thing because I only found out a few days ago that they were doing it. So I think there's probably going to be about 5 or 6 of us showing up this time. That'll
be good getting it on the big screen again. I might even try and do the 007 retrospective one for getting Spectre again because obviously it's pretty much gone on all the cinemas here at the moment. But yeah, I'd like to see it on the big screen one more time, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, damn right. I'm excited, man. It's going to be good.
Nice. So I watched a drama the other day, which I think quite a few of our listeners watched, and it was called The Night Manager. Now, this is based on a John Le Carre story, John Le Carre novel, and I've never read it before.
Is it John Le Carre or John Le Carre? I think it's John Le Carre.
Is it Le Carre?
I grew up saying John Le Carre, And then I think I remember hearing on some trailer that it was John le Carre, and I was like, oh, I didn't know you said it like that. But it could be either. Don't know. Anyway, sorry, continue. I'm sorry for butting in.
So we'll call him John Le C.
John.
So,
Johnny C.
John. Yeah, that's right. And I've never read it before, so I didn't know what to expect. I'd heard these things on Twitter about, it's Tom Hiddleston's calling card or his audition to be Bond or anything like this. So obviously I knew it was sort of spy set and stuff like this. And basically this guy, he's the night shift manager at a sort of well-established hotel, and he goes to sort of different ones. But we see him in one in sort of Egypt, in Cairo to start with. And basically, I won't sort of go into detail in case you want to watch it, but
I do, yeah.
He kind of he's. If there's any information that needs to go to the British government, he kind of, sends it their way, so to speak. It's not like a classic secret agent James Bond style, but it still was really interesting. Now, it's definitely worth a watch. The drama, I think, is good. The storyline's not bad. There were one or two elements I wasn't sure about, but the main thing I wanted to watch it for was Tom Hiddleston, basically. Now, when I watched it, I was thinking to myself, right, could this guy be Bond? Could he be Bond? Every time he was on the screen, could he be Bond? Could he be Bond? Now, I think he moved well. He had a bit of a Connery-esque move to him, which was really nice. He had the way that he was dressed, man, you know that they watched Casino Royale, literally 5 minutes before, and, put him in, a shirt with rolled up sleeves and tan trousers or whatever, and, he's in some suits as well. And he has an interesting look. He's obviously a decent looking chap, and he's a really good actor. But I must admit, I watched it, and I didn't see Bond there. I saw a bloody good actor who can look great, and he's obviously done a lot of good stuff before. But I didn't get that feeling. I'm not sure. I just didn't get it.
I have some thoughts on this. Obviously, I haven't seen The Night Manager yet, so thank you for not divulging any spoilers. But his name's been bandied around a fair bit. He's sort of like what I would say everyone's going, oh, Tom Hardy this, Michael Fassbender that when it comes to the next Bond. And his name usually crops up, but just not quite as often as those two, maybe. I can't see it personally. Maybe I need to watch The Night Manager and that will change my mind. But I feel he's not sexy enough. Do you know what I mean?
No,
you look at all of the other Bonds and you're like, they are handsome dudes, and you've got. I believe them when, with the exception of Timothy, weirdly, when the women look at them and swoon. I'm like, yeah, I can understand that. Timothy, for whatever reason, I don't believe it when the women swoon over Timothy. Maybe it's his haircut and license, don't know. But but with Tom Hiddleston, he's a bit too sort of like say, good actor, but he's a bit too skinny looking, I think. I don't think he has that look. But with that said, I remember when they wheeled out Daniel at the casino press conference, oh, this is our new Bond, and he had that awful curtain blonde haircut, and I was thinking, they've ruined everything. What on earth have they done? This is just not right. And then I remember hearing him talk, and I was like, oh, he's actually got quite a commanding voice to him. Okay, but so it depends how they actually present him in the film, if they were to go that way. In terms of would they ever go with him, I feel like he's, like we always say, they usually go for more of an unknown, somebody who's maybe been in one or two minor roles in big movies, but isn't a headliner. I would say Tom Hiddleston, he's obviously been in the Avengers and all that kind of stuff. But I would still say he's probably within a realistic bracket of who could be the next Bond. He's not a Tom Hardy who's wrecking out, whatever movies he wants to make and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think in terms of a realistic choice, maybe. Would I like to see him as Bond? Probably not.
That exactly mirrors my thoughts. I think he's not quite the household name that obviously Tom Hardy is, like you said. And if he did do it, I still think he'd do an okay job. I'd like him to bulk up a bit, but when I saw him in this thing, I know he wasn't completely the Bond character, but he didn't have that sort of magnetism that some of the others have. Now, I know I mentioned this before, particularly on the Facebook page, but when I watched And Then There Was None, the Agatha Christie thing over Christmas, have you seen that yet?
Do you know what? I haven't. I've been meaning. It's actually one of my missus's favourite books, so I've been meaning to watch that, but I haven't got around to it.
Okay. Now, Aidan Turner in that, for me, like I was watching it and it was screaming Bond at me. It was like, this is Bond. And
I saw some stills from it, and he's got the dicky bone and everything, isn't he?
Yeah. Now, when you look at him, for me personally, he gave off a Bond vibe. I know it might not, there's so many others, but I got that. Sometimes you watch it and you think, wow, and it suddenly hits you and think, okay, this could actually happen. And I got that completely with him. When I was watching The Night Manager, I didn't get it at all. Nothing against Tom Hiddleston, but for me personally, I just didn't get whatever that special thing is.
He's got old. What's his name again? The other dude you were just mentioning.
Aidan Turner.
Aidan Turner. He's got a bit of a Timothy Dalton look about him for some reason. So there is that, and it must be said, the ladies love a bit of Poldark, don't they? Because he's always walking around in the fields bare chested and that. He's rocking the six pack and all the rest of it. So yeah, I haven't actually seen him acting in anything yet. So I do need to watch. And then there were
He's
none.
quite smooth. He can do a Pierce Brosnan smoothness.
Oh yeah,
so he's got that bit down.
I would say out of the two, I'd actually say, to be honest with you, he's actually one to watch for a possibility to follow on from Daniel, because he's exactly the right level for a new Bond actor. He's got a TV series, not really done much in terms of movies that I know of anyway, maybe he has. He's definitely got the look, and if you say he can pull off the smoothness, I would say he's definitely one to keep an eye on, old Aidan Turner, for sure. And is he? Where's he from? Is he English? Is he Irish? Scottish?
I think he's Irish. Yeah, I think he is Irish, but he can do whatever accent really you need. But it'll be good for you to watch it, so we can have a chat about it on the next one or the one after, and just see what you think. It might be that you think he's completely lame, and you don't want him, and you want something else. But then obviously,
do you know what? I had a little bit of that with James Purefoy, right? You remember when he was being bandied around before Daniel, and I saw a photo of him from First Night. And I was like, damn, man, he looks good. Like, there was just one particular shot where he had that sort of like smarminess that Bond's got to have. Obviously, he's dressed in like old medieval clothes, but like there was this one photo. I was like, shit, that's the man for the job, totally. Like based on that. And then I saw him acting. I was like, to be honest, there was some vibe about him that I was just like, do you know what? Actually, maybe not. He just didn't. It didn't come across for me watching the match, but like that photo. So it remains to be seen.
It's a bit like that with. I mean, I felt the same for him, and also Clive Owen. He was like my number one go-to Bond prior to Daniel.
Was he?
Board, just because he had that. Not well, the looks wise, I was, because to me that was just how Bond.
He had that movie, The Croupier, didn't he, where he was in the dicky all the time? Yeah. But
I mean, from sort of, I've seen him in some stuff which, to be honest, I wasn't overly keen on. So from that side of things, I don't think he was quite at that level.
My thoughts about him were he's got like, okay, he's got the tall, dark and handsome thing going on, but he's just got a boring voice. He's Johnny Monotone as far as I'm concerned. I don't, I would have been like, not sure about that. It'd have been like, name's Bond, James Bond. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But who knows? There's all this thing going on with Daniel. I know we said we wouldn't talk about it, but it's there, isn't it? So we've had people saying, no, he's quit. At least like quitting. No, he's coming back. No, it's up to his missus. Whatever she says goes.
That's the funny one.
It's like,
I mean, come on. He's allowed to do Bond providing his missus gives him permission. I mean, that was the most retarded headline I've read in a long time. But it's all fun and games, I suppose.
And one of his close actor mates, do you remember Mark Strong? They were pictured together in Austria, weren't they? And
we jumped the gun a bit, didn't we? And assumed he was going to be Blofeld because they were together there. But
that's it. Could he be Blofeld or in the movie? And obviously he wasn't. But there's a bit of... He had something to say about it. Now, basically, this is what Mark Strong had to say. Whether this is 100% true or not, but this is apparently what he said. Do you know what? I'd have loved to have played the villain in a Bond movie while Daniel was doing it, because he's a pal and that would have made things great. But I think he's come to the end of his Bond time, and so it's possibly never going to happen, but that would have always been great. Having played so many villains, it would have been wonderful to have done the villain of all villains, if you like, because a Bond villain has status all of its own.
Damn right.
Yeah, too right. Asked if he could try and convince Craig to do one more film, Strong said, "Well, I will try, believe me, I will do my best, but there are powers at work greater than us who make all these decisions. He has been wonderful and he's loved it, but I think he feels like he's mined it. He's done what he wants with it, that point has come." So there, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is very interesting because they are mates, of course. They hang out together all the time and all that kind of business. So I think it's no secret that Daniel's 4 movies in now. So when you're at that stage of the game, you would definitely at least begin to think about what comes next and like moving on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's no surprise that, okay, he's probably like done what he wanted to do with it. He's achieved everything. I don't think that means there's nowhere else you could take it. I mean, with our post-Spectre speculations, that there's plenty you could do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that's come from him. Personally, I feel like, okay, Mark Strong is currently in a spy-related movie, Grimsby, with Sacha Baron Cohen. Yeah. So it's, a bit of headline grabbing again, maybe. At the end of the day, these actors, they know how to play the game, don't they? The whole interview circuit is a promotional thing. It's not just a chat for the sake of having a chat. So if you're going to bust out a quote like that, you're fairly certain that's going to get some serious eyeballs on it if the mate of Daniel is saying, oh, yeah, I think it's coming to an end. So again, I wouldn't take that as gospel. I would say that, take it with a pinch of salt. Again, the last 2 films have been so successful, despite the US criticisms of Spectre. Financially, they've been so successful that there is no way Barbara will let him go that easy. And the fact that he got the co-producer credit, that to me tells me, in terms of everything that matters, he's going to be back for at least one more. I've got an outside bet it'll be 2, but at least one more he'll be back. There's no way he's talking a day.
Doing a back-to-back or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll see. Well, the interesting thing as well is he could just be, like we said previously, pulling a Roger, and he's like, I tell you what, Mark, I'll buy you a Guinness if you just pretend that I've said that I'm going to quit. Yeah. And, of course he's going to do that if that's his mate, isn't he? He's going to obviously spread the word, and Eon are going to think, oh, fuck, maybe he is thinking about it. Right, let's add on another nought onto that check and see if we can keep him. That could be part of it. Who knows? I mean, that's
definitely going to be where they're coming from with that. At the end of the day, if Danny was like, yeah, I'll probably do 3 more. It's like, all right, well, that's in the bag, sorted. Do you know what I mean? It's just the game that you have to play. So,
and like he said on that interview as well, it would be boring if he came out straight away and said, yeah, I'm doing the next 2 or 3. There needs to be a bit of willy won't he, I guess. Yeah. And, like we were saying about the 4 films, right? So Connery, 4 years, 4 films. Roger Moore, 6 years, 4 films. And Danny Boy is 9 years to do his 4 films. So, it's a long time, isn't it? I
would say
time.
As well, yeah. I mean, obviously there was the hiccup with the gap between Quantum and Skyfall, obviously. So there's that to take into account. But at the same time, I just feel like these movies would take a lot longer to make now than they would have back in the 60s and 70s. I mean, you look at the amount of time it would have taken to shoot Dr. No or even Goldfinger, and you compare that to how long it would have taken to shoot Skyfall or Spectre. I mean, it's going to be such a longer process these days. So that makes sense. But I think, it's probably going to be, 2018 before we see the next Bond film, I would think.
Yeah, definitely. So. They're not going to get one out by next year. No, nah. I doubt it anyway. Interestingly, another bit of news, again, if it's true or not, I don't know, about Bond 25. We're starting the Bond 25 rumour mill already.
Yeah, it is.
Aside from casting, is that they're looking to potentially shoot in a place that you visited last year, Dubrovnik. Now, you said this was a pretty decent place. So what do you think as a location?
Do you know what? So for those that don't know, last summer, me and my lady did a little trip across Europe via train because I thought it would be like From Russia with Love. Wasn't like that at all. It was like sardines on British Rail or whatever. But so we did. Where did we go? We went Paris, Vienna, Prague. What's the place in Hungary? Capital of Hungary. What is it?
Is it Sofia?
No.
Budapest?
Budapest. We went to Budapest and then we ended up in Dubrovnik in the last bit. And out of all of those places, Dubrovnik was the best one by far. It was amazing. Wow. I loved Dubrovnik. Obviously famous for King's Landing in Game of Thrones. But yeah, it was absolutely stunning, and totally, if you said that was a Bond location, I could totally see that. It would be perfect for it, without a doubt. Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm excited, man. I got my preemptive visiting before they made it, if that is true, of course.
Yeah. It'll be good, because I remember you saying it had quite the old style to it as well, with the old town and all the little islands and stuff. So that'd be quite cool.
Yeah,
we haven't seen. Have we seen Bond visiting a little island?
No, we haven't, man. And that could be it. You know, like we did a boat day where we rented a boat and went, and there's just tons of little islands. The water is crystal clear, and it almost has that Caribbean vibe about it, where you just zip from one island to the next, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It was wicked. Yeah, can't recommend it highly enough. But yeah, man, I can't think of a more perfect location for Bond than that, for sure.
Cool. Excellent. Well, we'll have to wait and see. We've got a while to go, but we'll see soon enough. I just wanted to do a quick update on the Christie's live auction.
Yeah.
We've got the results of that now. Obviously, this will be a couple of weeks ago, but it'd be worth going through, because some of them are like skyrocketed way past their estimates. Yeah. So we'll just quickly go through them and see. So there was a Blu-ray set signed by Daniel Craig with JB cufflinks as well. Now that was estimated between 3 and 5K. Guess how much it went for?
By the tone of your voice, I would say considerably more.
£30,000. So it went for almost 10 times the estimate.
So did he wear those cufflinks in the film? He must have done.
Yeah, but I think he definitely did. But there were more than just one pair that he wore in the film. But they were one pair that he did wear in the film.
Nice.
I mean, basically, looking at this, anything Daniel touched, it just sold for stupid money. The Day of the Dead costume now. So we're talking the top hat, the cloak, the gloves, the skull cane, all of that sort of stuff. Now that was estimated between £12,000 and £18,000.
Yeah.
Okay, and obviously the mask as well.
Yeah.
Guess how much that went for?
Go on, lay it on me.
£98,500, almost £100,000.
Shit, dude.
On his outfit. I mean, that's crazy. But what an outfit that would be!
That is such a striking costume as well, man. That would be amazing to have that. And you'd want to wear it all the time, wouldn't you? Like every Halloween, you'd be in that bad boy.
Oh, yeah. Easily. Yeah, definitely. So just quickly going through some of the others. So M's Longines watch, estimated between 5 and 7K and sold for 20,000. So not bad there.
Nice.
This would have been quite cool. The final legal Spectre script, signed by Mendes, Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson. It's a shame Danny didn't sign it as well, but that was estimated between 3 and 5K and made 10,625, so it's not bad. Now, Blofeld's 9-carat gold Spectring, this was the one you were really after.
Yeah.
Now, that was estimated between £4,000 and £6,000. It went for a paltry sum of £32,500.
Damn, man. Yeah,
but that would be
I would have
cool.
expected that to get a little bit more, to be honest with you, because like obviously anything Bond touches is going to be the premium price, but for Blofeld, considering it's the return of him after so long, and he is the iconic Bond villain, really, and it's the Spectre ring that Blofeld would have worn. I'm surprised that didn't go for more, considering that outfit went for nearly $100,000. So but interesting. I mean, still a decent chunk of change for sure.
Still not bad.
Yeah.
There was also a set of photo print characters in frames, and they'd all signed them. That was 6K to 8K estimate, and that went for $30,000. The Sam Smith writings on the wall music sheet with a 7-inch vinyl. 2K to 3K estimate, that went for $9,375, so not too bad. Now this is another one that you are after. Bond's 2-piece Tom Ford suit. Now this actually was within the estimate. I think the only lot that was actually
this
within
is the white
estimate.
dinner jacket suit, isn't it? Yeah,
so it's a white dinner jacket and the black trousers. Estimate between 20 and 30K, and that sold for 27,500. So it's quite interesting that one fell within the estimate itself. Just a couple more to go. The prototype Amiga Seamaster watch, worn by Daniel Craig. Jeez. Estimated between 15K and 20K. Sold for £92,500.
Damn. Okay, so that's in the same region as the Day of the Dead suit. What would you rather have out of those two if you could choose?
Oh, that's a tough call, because the Amiga you could wear it every day.
Yeah.
I know you could if you really wanted to. The other one, but then the other one would be so cool to have. That's hard. What would you say?
That
you
is
have
a tough
one, and I'll have the other. I'd probably go.
Do you know what? I'm not much of a watch guy. Like I know
No.
people obsess over watches, and
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
really one for that. I'm not one for watches. I'm not one for cars, really. But give me a really nice one, and I'll be happy. But I'm not gonna,
No.
have a little session over it.
Or while you're wearing
That's
it.
a very politically correct way of saying what I was saying. Well, not politically correct, but you know what I'm saying. PG-13. Yes,
You're getting them too American over there. PG-13.
I am, aren't I? I would say I think I'd have that Day of the Dead costume, man, because I think that is going to go down as like a real iconic sort of Bond costume. I think because it's so unusual for Bond, isn't it? I think
it's unusual, it's memorable, and Danny Boy's worn it all, and you could just bust it out. It's like whenever we see the lovely Norman Wanstall and he brings his Oscar for everyone to touch. If we went anywhere or anyone ever came around, you'd just be, oh look, here's the suit again, and then come downstairs and stuff. So I think you're right. I think I'd go for the suit, but the watch I wouldn't say no to either. Finally, we have only the smallest item there, which was the Aston Martin DB10.
I imagine this one was probably the most affordable of the whole thing.
Indeed, it was. It was estimated between £1 million and £1.5 million, and funny enough, it only went for £35. So whoever got that had a spanking good deal.
35.
No. So this one ended up selling for £2,434,500. So a good million above the original estimate. So that's
and that's the only one they're ever going to sell, isn't it? From what they said
to the public, I think there's probably a couple of guys at Aston have some. I'm sure some were wrecked in production anyway, and I think that was literally the only one that was going to be sold to the public. So there we are.
Damn, man, that was a big payday for Christie's.
It was indeed. They also did the online auction, which was ongoing. But that has actually finished now. But I wasn't able to find any of the actual sort of prices for those. But maybe by the next time we will have done. But
cool.
Those were the main ones from the live auctions.
Awesome. So before we get cracking with some For Your Eyes Only investigations, make sure you come and join us on Facebook. Put James Bond Radio into the search box and you'll find us. Come and follow us on Twitter, which is @James Bond Radio. Come to our iTunes page. Just put James Bond Radio into the iTunes Store search box and you will find us. Make sure you subscribe as well and set to auto download so you never miss an episode, which is very important because they're all equally wonderful. And obviously you can come over to jamesbondradio.com, join in the conversation in the comments section over there because that's always good fun. Much conversation to be had over there. And if you'd like to support the JBR cause, there's a donate button over there as well, which is always appreciated, though you should never feel obligated. But just know that it's always appreciated. And we do have some thanks to throw out to the JBR family who have donated so far. Over the last few weeks, we've had donations from Jeff Silence. Again, he's keen. He likes it. Good old man. Jeff. Thank you for that, Jeff. We had donation from Casper Ingalls, which was very lovely of you, Casper. And one from Matt Spencer as well. So big thanks go out to those elite members of the JBR family. We basically like anybody who donates. We like them more than the ones that don't donate. So if that's not encouragement, then I don't know what is.
I like it. It's good. And I think we should put one more shout out. We'll probably do this at the end of the podcast anyway. But obviously, for the next podcast, we're doing the 90 seconds review of For Your Eyes Only, where we want all our listeners to come to the webpage where it says leave a voicemail. Click on that. You've got 90 seconds. That's all you've got, and you've got to leave your own review of For Your Eyes Only. It'll be interesting to see what people, what thoughts we get and everything.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, with the Spectre episode, we got over 50 reviews in. But it'll be interesting to see how many we get for For Your Eyes Only, because obviously Spectre was the pinnacle of bondage at that time. Everybody was into it, so it'll be interesting to see. I doubt we'll get 50 reviews, but yeah, if you want to get involved with that, make sure you come over to jamesbondradio.com, click the leave us a voicemail button on the right hand side of the page, and let us know your thoughts on For Your Eyes Only in 90 seconds or less. And that will be we'll include that on the upcoming 90-second review episode. That'll be lovely. Cool. So before we crack on with the review, then one last thing. It's time for some Bond trivia.
Woo!
Good stuff. So I've got a question for you this week, Chris. Are you ready for it?
Go on then.
Well, I think
is it
I think
For Eyes Only related?
it
still,
is For Your
or
Eyes
not?
Only related.
Okay.
Now, I think you will get this straight away. I'm pretty sure. But so this is more of a question to the JBR family. But my question of the day is:
Yes.
according to Bond, what must you do before setting out for revenge?
That is a good question. Have a cup of tea, probably.
Cup of tea, some biscuits. Make sure you're well hydrated. Yeah, that's it. You got it. Good stuff.
Yes. Okay. Now, my question for you is, and obviously everyone who's listening, Mr. Tom Sears and the JBR audience, we know that the Havelock's two-man submarine is called Neptune. But can you tell me the name of the one-man sub that attacks them while they're out just beside the St. George's? Now, this is quite a tricky one. So Neptune is obviously the one that Bond and Melina go down in, and when they're attacked by the one-man sub, that's got a name as well. Can you tell me what it is?
Excellent questions. We will obviously reveal the answers to those later on in today's episode. So make sure, even if you're not interested in the review, make sure you keep listening so you can get the answers to those questions. Absolutely. Okay, then. So we left off last time at the halfway mark, which was where we basically see good old what's his face.
Luigi Ferrara.
Luigi Ferrara, that's it. Good stuff. We see good old Luigi. He's been killed by Locke, obviously, because you get the little pin. Bond comes out after taking on the ice skating hockey players on the Zamboni, and comes out. Luigi's
You like that word,
dead.
don't you?
I do, Zamboni. Yeah. So there we go. That was where we left off. So where do we begin this week then, Chris?
Okay, so this time, pretty much straight after that scene, we see Bond catching up with Melina. So she's just coming off a boat, and they're in Corfu, and he sort of suddenly goes to see her. And then I quite like this scene because they go to this little village, this little Corfu village, where you get to see a bit of Mediterranean culture, and you don't often get stuff like that in a Bond film, or not a lot. But I don't know, but it just had a nice feel. It had the music going. They do a little bit of shopping. There's a part where I think this fruit and vegetable sort of market seller gives them, I don't know if it's a pomegranate or something like that, and they both try and bite
figs?
it.
I think there were.
Oh,
figs
it might have been
they were
figs.
eating.
Sorry, yeah. It might have been figs, and then obviously it goes everywhere, and Bond's like, "Oh, you might need this," and everything like that. And it's only a small moment, but I think it's really nice. I kind of like small moments sometimes, and that's a good one, I think. What about you? Yeah,
no, it's just a brief little glimpse of them having a little romantic walk through the market and all that kind of stuff, which is nice. But yeah, so it's kind of like you've got you've gone from the death of Luigi, which is all very dark, and then you've gone straight to this like romantic scene, and then you've obviously the reason being for having this scene is that she opens up to him a little bit more, and she says how she's not had the courage to check her father's study and stuff and go on the boat since that they were killed. So that's the kind of the lead in and the purpose for the scene, I suppose. But yeah, you're right. It's nice to see a little bit of local culture on display.
Do you think anyone else tried to sneak in to the Havelock's boat to try and find information, or do you think there was, because he had a lot of his sort of friends or what have you permanently there, that no one did? Because if I was Christatos or Locke or someone, and you'd have keeping an eye on that boat, and probably have someone try to sneak in if
you would, wouldn't you?
Know.
Yeah, I suppose it's a bit of an easy target, yeah, for sure. But then next up, we cut to what should be a cornerstone scene in any Bond movie, which is the casino scene with a little bit of gamblage, which is lovely. And we see our first glimpse of Mrs. Brosnan herself, Countess Liesl von Schlaf, which is a good name. I like Liesl von Schlaf. It's an amusing word to say.
It sounds quite Fleming-esque as well, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely.
In fact, I think it is based on a Fleming character from Risico or For Eyes Only. There is a sort of a character that's got that sort of a name, I believe, anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's great to see it have a casino scene again. You got Bond playing Shemander Fair against that guy called Bunky, who's got a bit of the lazy eye, and it's
You
quite
see
good,
that
isn't
dude
it?
in a like that. He's one of those fellas that you've seen in more than one film, but you don't quite know where you've seen him before. Do you know what I mean? He's got that face, isn't he, that you remember?
Yeah, he's been around. He's been in quite a few things, but it's quite cool because obviously Bond is sort of besting him, and he's like, right, I'm going to sort you out, and the Countess comes over and he. Like half, and she's like, oh, come on, Bunky, where's your courage? And then he puts in the 4 million, and again he loses, and as soon as he's lost, she walks off, and he's kind of like, oh, great, cheers for that, which is kind of cool. She's obviously
you could almost say she's the Plenty O'Toole of this film.
She is indeed, exactly. Yeah, that's quite cool. And then obviously Bond, he then goes out to have dinner with Christatos, and a lovely couple they make as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sit around the dinner table.
Do you know what? There's a moment during this scene. So he's out there having dinner with Christatos, and Christatos suggests, I think it's a wine or something that was made in his homeland and all that kind of stuff. And Bond just basically poo-poos it and goes, "That's a little too sensitive for my palate. Actually, I'll have this instead." And I was like, "Oh, all right." It's not the most polite thing, but amusing nonetheless.
It was quite cool. Yeah, I never sure about if that's too harsh or not when I watch it. But again, he knows what he wants and what he likes. I like the fact that he orders an ouzo at the start. So Christatos has a whiskey and Bond has an ouzo, so that's quite interesting.
Absolutely.
And he has a salad and all this sort of stuff. But also the main sort of interesting point about this scene is the casino, and obviously the adjoining restaurant is owned by, or at least the adjoining restaurant definitely is owned by Columbo.
Yeah.
So while they're sitting down and having a drink, like not far away, Columbo's on the table having a meal. Countess joins him and they're having a chat and stuff. And Christatos is basically pointing out Columbo, saying, "Look, there he is." And he basically tells Bond that Columbo's sort of smuggling heroin to be refined and sold in England. So he sort of says to Bond, "So are you from the British Narcotics Board sort of thing?" And Bond's basically, would just tell me a bit more. And then he does the classic sort of line where he sort of says, "Stopping Columbo will be difficult. He has important connections. You cannot just arrest him. You must find a different way. You may have to kill him. Does this discourage you?" And
I've just got to stop you right there. That was an amazing Christatos performance. I'm impressed with that. Good stuff.
Really? Oh, cool. Yeah. Thanks. Sorry. But yeah, I think that's quite good because obviously he's trying to set up Columbo. He can't do it himself because obviously they know each other and he doesn't want to get sort of implicated in it. So he's like, "I know, let's get a British agent to do our dirty work for us, so to speak." But what I love is there's a real subtle bit where one of the waiters comes over and exchanges one candle for another. And then you see Columbo in his study with the candle, and underneath is like a little tape recorder, so he's been listening into the conversation. And obviously he's just heard that Christatos has asked Bond, to potentially kill him. And what I love about Columbo, I love the fact that he likes pistachio nuts, and I love it that we always see him eat pistachio nuts. I don't know what it is, and I think that was Topol's suggestion, but it's quite a cool character thing, I think.
Do you know what I like about this? Right, you've got some proper spying intrigue again in a Bond film. Do you know what I mean? It's not like you obviously you get your big action set pieces and stuff, but I like to see proper stealthy spying and bugs. Like I said about Spectre, I'd have loved to have seen a scene where he goes into a hotel room and just scans the room for bugs because he hasn't done that in a long time. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I love the fact that, like, in a sense, Bond has been outsmarted there. It's he's been bugged and he has no idea. But what I think is the best part of it is Columbo is such a charming character. He's like up there with Kerim Bey, with Draco and those kinds of characters. Like he's got that charming vibe about him, and I do love it. And the pistachios again makes him super memorable as well. So I've got a lot of love for Columbo, I think.
Yeah, he's awesome. And then obviously he comes back out and you don't know it, but he said something to the Countess and they have their little tiff and he basically tells her to get out and she chucks wine over him or whatever. And then the way that she walks over, stops and looks at Bond and then carries on. It's just so blatantly a trap. And obviously Kristatos says that. But Bond's like, if you play the odds, sort of thing. So Kristatos then is like, oh, why not? You can borrow my rolls. And then he gets in the car, doesn't he? So they're in the Rolls Royce and they're having a little chat. And there's one line that Roger says, which I don't know whether it's just so cheesy or if it's a work of genius, but I love the way that he says, I would have thought a lady in your position would get to know many things. And like the way that he does it is just like, I don't know. What do you recall that line?
Do you know what? That line didn't stand out for me. There are two lines in this section that make me smile, which is when he says that he's basically a novelist writing a book about Greek smugglers. And then like super like how open he is with it. He's like, I'm writing a book about Greek smugglers. Know any? Like, because it's almost like that thing when Bond will tease a villain and be like, I know exactly what you're playing at. But there's that just like little veneer of respectability about it. So there's that one. And my favourite part is when she gets out of the car and goes into the house and he says to the driver, I won't be needing you anymore tonight, and like dismisses the driver. And this driver's got like a cheeky grin on his face. I enjoy that bit, yeah.
That is good. That is very, very good. And the house itself is awesome, isn't it? Right on the beach, lovely little house. And they go inside, don't they? She's got champagne and oysters in the fridge. Mm. And I love the way Bond says bottoms up as well. Little reference there.
He does to both Man with the Golden Gun and Spectre, which obviously hadn't been made yet. But, Spectre would be the reference. Quite cool. Yeah.
Now, this scene, I've remembered ever since I was a wee lad for a particular reason, and I think I know what that reason is. Yeah, go on. Right. Now, the way that Lee Saw's accent slips is just brilliant. It's just you get to see so much, and it's it's left an indelible image. Sorry, did I say accent? I meant something else. So I don't know. What do you think? It's a classic bit of boob and nipple action going on.
Yes, and it's a very important one and a formative one for me as a child, because you do get to see the full Bond girl nip, which is always a pleasure, isn't it? Especially for a young boy. It's another, obviously it's another one of those blink and you miss it jobbies, isn't it? It's like you've got to be quick with it. You've got to be there with the old pause button to get it just at the right moment, but it definitely happens. Yeah, good stuff. I'm a big fan.
But it's quite a cool scene though, isn't it? It's like they're obviously chatting, have you learned much about me or whatever, have I ever? And you see Bond tipping out the champagne as well, which I guess there's no need for anymore, is he? He's already about to get quids in, so he doesn't need any more champagne. And I think... there's basically from there, obviously she's a Scouser as well, which we don't get many Scouser Bond girls, do we?
No, for any non-English British listeners, that means somebody from Liverpool.
Yeah, it does indeed. Now, something else which we never see in a Bond film, the next morning, it's a lovely sunny morning and they're walking across a beach and they're holding hands, Tom, hands. When have we seen Bond hold hands with a Bond girl before? Like that.
We must have seen him hold hands with Tracy, surely.
That is literally the only one that I could potentially think of. I don't know if he does with Vesper, but with your average, Bond girl that you hardly see.
Yeah.
It doesn't really happen, does it? I guess.
No, I'm sure he must have held hands with Tracy at some point, but I think. Do you know what I like? This scene, above all others in this one, reminds me of Majesty's big time. It's like the Majesty's pre-title sequence. The way Bond is dressed, he's got the dress shirt on, open-necked, black trousers. Obviously, there's a fight on the beach. Even the way Liesl is dressed is a bit sort of Tracy-esque.
It is.
And I've got to say, man, a lot of people comment on, Roger's advancing age at this stage of the game, but I think he looks fucking brilliant in this movie. There are some unusual costume choices that were very much of their time as well, Chris, obviously. But there's some brilliant scenes where like he looks brilliant in this beach scene. I think he looks great during the coral scene at the end as well, where he's got like the blue V-neck T-shirt, which I'm actually currently rocking myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think this scene is really good. I think it's really memorable. Obviously, very Majesty's kind of influenced. Obviously, you've got on sort of two levels, really, in the sense that you've got the buggies that come along. You've got obviously Locke in one of the buggies. Those buggies were cool, weren't they?
Yeah.
And then there's the whole sort of like, chase along the beach. Bond's doing his best to deal with it. Liesl runs off on her own a little bit. She obviously gets run over and killed, which is, the way they shot that is very brutal looking. You definitely feel that impact, don't you, when she goes. Yeah. And then obviously you've got that kind of, the beach battle, basically. And then what also massively reminds me of Majesty's is the way those dudes come out of the sea. Not in obviously Bond, that doesn't happen in Majesty's, but just like the way you see George carrying Tracy out of the waves, and then you've got those dudes with their harpoons just walking out of the sea. And obviously it's another way. Basically, nobody, if you want to speak to Bond, you can't just go and ask him. You've got to basically fight him and knock him out, and then bring him along, and then you can talk to him. And that's the sort of, that's the Allies' way.
That's what you're working
with.
Yeah,
completely.
Yeah.
But what do you think? What do you think about this sequence?
I think it's cool. I think it starts off when they're doing the walk. It's got the cheesiest sax I think I've ever heard. I thought it's definitely one that you'd be into, that sort of saxophone.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love the Dune buggies. I remember, in fact, was it last year or the year before? There was one of them was on sale on eBay for like 20 grand.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
And it was like, imagine if you had that. I don't know if you'd have any chance to actually use it, but I mean, that'd be so cool. But yeah, I think that's great. They're sort of menacing. They sound really good. The fact there's like, what is there, 3 or 4 of them or whatever. It's a bit strange that Liesl sort of runs away straight away, but then you kind of understand she's scared, and then she obviously didn't see Locke. But the way that her head smashes into this windscreen, in fact, I think the stunt girl that did it was actually injured doing that shot. But the impact is so hard hitting. I think it's brilliant. It's great. And then you've got sort of Bond almost getting run over as well, diving out the way, and you think, okay, this is it. And Klaus comes around and Locke's there, and then Klaus gets harpooned and Bond kicks the gun away from Locke. And then I love the doves on the wetsuits as well. They're so big. They're like just in case you didn't quite get the subtlety of what's going on. We are the dove. But I think that was really cool. And like you said, Bond has to get knocked out. It's not like, oh, do you want to come and join us for tea and crumpets or whatever? It's no.
I suppose I've often thought it was funny. Like, I feel like in Majesty's, Draco didn't perhaps need to do that to get Bond along to a meeting. I feel like he could have just sent a little invitation out or something. Yeah. But I feel with this one, I suppose Columbo's motivations would be correct in the sense that he knows Bond now thinks he's the bad guy. So if he'd have just invited him along, it probably wouldn't have worked out as well. So this was his way of getting him to him so he can explain, I guess. Yeah. But
I
so
think
that
it
kind of does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously Bond comes to, he's on this boat. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought this, but the guy, like Columbo's guy, with the curly hair, he's always reminded me of like a young Chevy Chase. Do you know who Chevy Chase is?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, on the National Lampoons, and he looks just like him. Well, I
Do you
always
know
thought
what?
so.
I see that resemblance massively, but I always, as a kid, thought he looked like John McEnroe.
Oh, really? In fact, I see that as well. Yeah. So he's an amalgamation of John McEnroe and Chevy Chase.
There is a lot of lookalikes in this one. There's a dude, I can't remember whether he's on Columbo's team or whether he's on Christatos's team, but there's a henchman later on that looks the spitting image of Gerard Depardieu as well. Do you know the guy I mean?
Has he got a moustache and a
no, he doesn't. He's got like the bum chin.
I know the guy.
Do you know what I mean?
And the big nose.
Yeah.
I know the one. Yeah. Maybe it is. Who knows? Yeah, so basically he then gets taken to Columbo's cabin, and Columbo plays that message again while he's eating his pistachio nuts. And Bond is obviously cautious at the moment, doesn't know what's going on. He thinks, this is a bit dodgy. And then Columbo basically says, Christatos was telling you about him, not me. He's the one that smuggles heroin and so on. And what I find quite funny is that Columbo admits to smuggling gold. He admits to smuggling diamonds. Now, basically, that's what Goldfinger did in Goldfinger. And, the whole plot of Diamonds, aside from the satellite, is obviously the smuggling diamonds.
Yeah.
So he admits to two things which sort of set in motion previous Bond adventures, which I always thought was quite interesting, but no heroin. Which is quite cool. So he basically says that Christatos was a double agent working for Russia against Britain and Greece during the war. And Bond's like, our country gave him the King's Medal. And Christatos like, my heart would laugh were it not so heavy for my poor Liesel. And like, do you know what? I mean, obviously that's a shit interpretation, but I love, it's so shit. I apologise. I love Columbo's voice, man. It's so good. Can you do an impression of Columbo?
I don't know if I can off the top of my head. I would have to have practiced it. What I will do is I'll practice it for the 90-second review episodes, and if I can bust it out, then I will try.
Okay.
But some come naturally to me. Others I can't do at all. I don't know whether I can do Columbo or not. But
he's going to be difficult, but I love his voice. It is really cool. So what do you think about this scene? How basically Bond goes in a bit cautious, naturally. Columbo basically tells him, no, it should be Christatos you're after. And then basically to get Bonds to believe him, he gives him his loaded Walther back. And Bond's like,
do you know what? With every passing scene, I'm seeing more and more parallels with Spectre for this film. Do you know what I mean? Because that's how, Bond gets Mr. White's trust in that scene before he shoots himself by passing the loaded gun. So that's what happens here. And I think I think this scene is wicked. This is very much the sort of scene from Majesty's, but today's the 13th. That scene, do you know what I mean? It's the same thing in a sense. Somebody who's potentially a villain and would be an enemy of Bond, but comes around to being an ally during that scene. But yeah, man, like I said before, Columbo is such a charming dude. He's up there with Karen Bay. He's definitely up there with Draco. He's just that kind of old school, sort of like lovable rogue type, isn't he?
Yeah, completely. But why can't every ally be like that?
Yeah,
I know they can't, but it's just so with charm. Okay, is it the case that some people have it and some people don't? Even in terms of people that are acting to trying to be charming, do you still need that certain something to be able to show charm on screen? Is it either a case of you have it or you haven't? What do you think?
I don't know. I think that's probably what makes those characters so special. Like, for example, looking at another ally, like the Felix Leiter in The Living Daylights. He's not got that sort of charm to him. It's a bit unfair to just single him out, but there's these guys stick out for a reason. And I think there's I think what it is for me is that there's like a naughty glint in their eye. They're not these sort of stiff-assed kind of government people or whatever. There's a glint of naughtiness. Like with Karen Bay, you get that sequence where Bond says, "Oh, she found your technique too violent," and they have a little smile and a grin. Draco, you just know, aside from punching his own daughter in the face, you just know he's one of those, he reminds me of an old school swashbuckler. I can see him with the big open neck and with a fencing sword, battling for a princess in an old movie or something. And you just know that dude has probably got about 10 mistresses and none of them mind that there's 10 of them because he's so charming, And I feel like Columbo is probably the same. He's just got that, there's a humour in his eyes, I think. I think that's what comes across with those people.
Yeah, magical.
Yeah.
And do you know what else is quite funny? Now, I'm to be honest, I haven't put a huge amount of time into it, but my foreign linguistic ability is very limited.
Yeah.
But the very sort of whatever basics they may be have basically been gathered from multiple viewings of Bond films. Okay?
Yeah, mine too. Yeah.
So basically, my Japanese is limited to For Eyes Only and For Your Eyes Only. What am I talking about? You Only Live Twice, and various bits and pieces, Indian from Octopussy and so on. Now with For Your Eyes Only, we get quite a cool Greek word called thrasos, which means guts. And I've always remembered that because I know it because it's in Bond, isn't it? And I've never had a chance to use it, which isn't all that odd, really. But is that the same for you? So anything that you've picked up sort of foreign language wise has always been in a Bond film? Or?
Yes, I know. Next time I'm in a a horse-drawn carriage in the snow or whatever, I can go vai avanti, and that means to keep going. Yeah. There's my Fiora's only one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's nice. So yeah, I like stuff like that though. It's always pretty cool. Wicked. So what happens? What's the next scene then?
So next up is one of I think this. Do you know what I say? This like. We said this about the ski chase, didn't we? With the going down the bobsleigh and all that kind of stuff. That there's a lot of really good stuff in this movie, man. And the more I think about it, like I said at the beginning again, the more I think about it, the more it's going up in my estimations. This warehouse sequence is brilliant, and it's taken straight from Risico, isn't it? That was pretty much the whole story of Risico, if I remember correct. But like this warehouse sequence is brilliant. And I love that we've got some sneakiness going on. I love the way they pull up silently in the little boat, and they're sort of eyeballing the place. It's obviously Kristatos' warehouse, and then you've got the kind of you got a little bit of sneakage going on before it all kind of kicks off and turns into a big gunfight. So the thing I remember most about this as a kid was those big sort of round, I don't know what you would call them, but those big sort of
drums,
round containers drums is probably a good word. They almost look like massive rolled up printer paper or something, don't they? But what I like about this is you've got like some like cool characters in the sense that you've got like Columbo sort of goons kind of with him. They're all sort of like, they've all got a different look and a different vibe to them. It's like a proper old school adventure, this scene, and I do dig it in a big way. What do you think?
For me, it's got to be one of the best scenes in the film as well. I love the fact that, like you said, they sneak up and then suddenly we're into an all-out battle where you've got probably about 30 different fights going on at the same time. People with guns, people with knives, chucking them, people just grappling, punching people and what have you. There's a brilliant bit where Bond, I think it is, spots Locke and he's about to go and get him, and basically someone's about to shoot Bond, and Columbo saves his life, and then someone's about to shoot Columbo and Bond saves his life. And it's a really nice sort of thing when you see each other saves lives. But he's got some pretty handy people, Columbo, and there's a cool thing where they sort of throw a knife and take people down. And it's not long before they kind of take over the outside of the warehouse. And just before they enter, you see that big rolling drum go over one guy, and that's so cool when he gets like just. It's like almost I don't know what like almost like a steamroller, isn't it? Looks over. No, but when they go inside the warehouse, this bit I freaking love because it's suddenly it gets silent. The gunfire stops because they're each trying to hide from each other. There's the odd little shot fired, but basically they're trying to work out, okay, what's going on here. And Bond, again with his knowledge, he sort of gets, there's a little bit leaking from a drum. Has a little lick, raw opium, and I love the fact that he knows what it is just by tasting it, and he does the exact same thing in Living Daylights, doesn't he?
He does indeed,
thing. So he knows his opium, but that's really cool. One of the best bits as well is when basically Bond is kind of out in the open. He's trying to look to see where the other guards are, and Columbo says, "Watch it," and kind of pulls him back in, and I love that just because Columbo's being more professional than Bond at that point. He's also looking out for a mate, and perhaps because he knows that Locke's men are probably pretty handy as well. And what I love about this is it's a real team. So it's almost like everyone is looking out for one another.
Yeah.
So if you're about to be shot or stabbed, there's going to be someone else that's covering your back, and you're covering someone else's back, and that is why I love this particular sort of scene.
Yeah.
But it's also quite funny, I think, where they're trying to be all sneaky and quiet, and Bond's like, JIM diving equipment for salvage's depth at over 300 feet. It's like, Bond, be quiet.
Yeah, can you imagine if you and I were doing a nighttime raid on a warehouse and you started spouting about some diving equipment on the wall? I'd be like, all right, now's not the time, Chris. Like, let's take on the task in hand at first. You can tell me about it later. Yeah, that was an interesting choice, but obviously it's setting up the scene a little bit later on. It's just a kind of a funny way to kind of do it. A funny time to do it, which makes me laugh. Yeah, absolutely.
I like also Columbo chucking the pistachio nuts across the floor.
I was going to say that, man. That's a cool little moment. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I feel like sometimes those things can be an excuse for a scene. It's like, well, if Columbo eats pistachios, then we can have that scene with the, that's where they crunch on the pistachios, and that's what gives them away. But I don't feel like that with this. I feel like the pistachios, and I think it's the fact that it is pistachios that makes it so unique to him, because if you didn't know any better, you would just assume he was eating peanuts, wouldn't you? Do you know what I mean? But it's like pistachios. Yeah. But and I tell you what I noticed as well is he likes to crack the shells with his teeth as well, doesn't he? He doesn't eat them like a normal person, where you just like crack it open with your fingers and throw the nut in your mouth. He chucks the whole thing in his mouth, cracks the shell with his teeth, and then spits the shells out on the floor, which again is another little character detail, which I think is really nice that he goes to that trouble to have a little quirk to his character like that. I do like it. Yeah.
I wonder if Topol was into pistachio nuts before the film or not.
Maybe,
Lucky he didn't have a nut allergy. Well, at least I'm hoping he didn't. Otherwise, he would have been pretty screwed. But yeah, no, that's really cool. I love also there's a bit where they're just behind all the drum barrels inside, aren't they? And they basically hear some of Locke's men, and they shoot the sort of rope that's tying them together. And then you've got 4, 5, 6 of them all rolling over all these people, and they're all like, just being squashed and nothing. That's pretty cool. And then obviously it breaks out into the gunfire, and Columbo sort of men overpower, I guess, most of Locke's. But Locke's, we've seen him put this sort of
plastic explosive, I would imagine, on the mine, which, explosive. As you pointed out last time, gives you the hint that there's a mine there that looks precisely like the one from the beginning. So it assumes that they were part of that, the actual downing of the St. George. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which
I think they pretty much had to. And then he's got that sort of wire leading out, so he kind of legs it. And, the shootout continues, and Bond basically sees the mine, tells Columbo, get your men out. The thing's about to blow up or whatever. So as they're going out, Bond takes a hand grenade, and they get outside. And there's a scene that's quite similar to the interior of the Leparis from Spy, where there's a guy with a gun shooting, and Bond chucks a hand grenade, and it lands next to him. And he just goes to grab it, and as he goes to grab it, basically it blows up. And it's a bit similar to a Spy, but in Spy, Bond kind of gets away with it just. Yeah. But that's quite cool. And then when Locke sort of actually sets the mine off, it ain't half big, the explosion.
It is, yeah. Do you know what, though? This sequence is reminding me of something earlier, which is that, remember when we went through the ski chase? And there's all the different levels to the ski chase, in the sense that you start off with, you got Bond on skis, you got that little standoff where he's behind the tree, then you got more skiing, then you got him going up the stairs for the ski jump, and it's like action, and then it comes right back and gets really tense and really not much going on. It's all very kind of low level. And it's the same with this, isn't it? They come in on the sneaky, it kicks off, they get inside the warehouse, and it goes all sneaky again. And then as soon as they shoot the barrels, it all kicks off again. Do you know what I mean? So there's the different levels of action. It's not just an all-out, balls-out scene. There's layers to it, I would say.
Yeah,
which is kind of cool. I think. Do you know what? I think there was some. There are times in the Bond series where I feel like they approach things differently. Like, for example, you would, when you're in the early run of a new Bond actor or whatever, the first sort of 2 or 3 movies, it's like, right, that first one was a success. How do we build on that? How do we make the next one bigger? And obviously with this one, it's a conscious effort to pull it back down, because you couldn't get much bigger than Moonraker. But I feel like this was a film, and especially because there was in the earlier stages, there was the mind of having a new Bond actor, that Roger wouldn't come back, and the throwbacks to Majesties at the beginning to introduce the new actor. And I feel like this is definitely one of those where they've just put a lot more thought into what's actually going on, like a lot more thought into that script and a lot more sort of, it's just there seems to be more layers to this one than there would be in perhaps a Moonraker or even a Spy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. Well, it was Dickie Maybaum wrote this along with Michael G. Wilson, and I think this was his first proper co-collaboration as scriptwriter. And you can tell he's got sort of a good mind for that sort of thing, like you're saying, layering everything, because a lot of the film has scenes that are like that and link up well. And I think that he was obviously contributed quite a big part to it. But yeah, I this film, the more I think about it, the more I realise how many cracking scenes there are in it. There are a load. And again, you mentioned about sort of layers in the action scene before. Well, this one then continues again when we've got Bond chasing after Locke. So Locke goes off in the car, doesn't he? And Bond thinks, I know, I'll cut him off via the stairs. Now, I'm in two minds about the stairway. First of all, I think it's a great idea. It'd be great to see Bond outrunning a car almost by obviously going up the stairs. But I'm really not sure about the huffing and puffing that you hear. Like we mentioned before, it could be to the Rocky soundtrack, and it would be better. But I don't know. Do you think they should have edited that out, or are you okay with it? What's your opinion?
Okay, so basically, what you've got then is you've got Locke barreling down the road, and then you see Bond cutting him off by going up the stairs and sort of like heading him off at the pass, so to speak. But I would say, okay, so you've got the basic fact that Roger is a man who's in his mid-50s now, so he's not the spring chicken anymore. No. I think even for me as a man much younger than that at this point in my life, if I was running up those stairs, I would be huffing and puffing like that too. So I feel like that adds to the realism and the tone of the movie. For example, if this was Spy or Man with a Golden Gun or Live and Let Die, he probably wouldn't have even broken a sweat. He'd have probably, just sort of like waltzed it. But I feel like this is a much more down-to-earth film, and I feel like I think it adds to the urgency of it a little bit. Yeah. But I know what you're saying, because there's a scene when he's doing the rock climbing later when he looks knackered, doesn't he, climbing those rocks? But at the same time, it's like, well, you would be in that sequence. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose it might appear a bit jarring simply because this is the first time we've seen Roger's Bond in a down-to-earth movie. Do you know what I mean? Whereas he wouldn't have had that before. I don't know. What do you think? No,
I think that's 100% spot on. It definitely keeps within the realistic tone. And the fact is, he doesn't slow down. He keeps going. So if he is knackered and still running, that makes him even stronger than if it didn't matter to him anyway. So in a way, you're right. It is better. It's just because you don't normally hear that, which is why it suddenly is a bit strange. But I tell you what, either which way, it's more than made up for in that very next clip where we see him. Well, he almost gets run over at one point, and then he continues up another flight of stairs, and he gets to that point where he walks out, and he's in the middle of the archway. And like Locke sees him, and he's like, right, foot down, charging in the Mercedes towards him, and Bond just stands there, wide stance, 2 hands around the gun, pointing him down, and like he could get run over in any second. This car is probably hitting 30, 40 miles an hour, charging towards him, and he is rock. He's standing there completely balls out, takes a shot to get Locke, and I love that. That's so good. And he basically gets him in the shoulder, and it causes obviously Locke the steering wheel to sort of take the car, so it's like teetering on the edge of the cliff then. And then we get pretty much probably the most famous scene in the film.
Do you know what, man? I think that image of Roger stood in the archway, legs akimbo, looking down the sights of the gun is one of his most iconic moments in the whole series. Like, you see that moment in the montages, don't you? Like the greatest hits montages of Bond. Definitely. Like, you see that one all the time, don't you? That is such a striking image of him there, right there, with a car speeding towards him, fires off a couple of rounds. I think that is a brilliant moment. I love it. And sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, this has probably happened before, but what I would absolutely love if there were a series of posters released for each actor to have portrayed Bond in their coolest moment. Perhaps 2 or 3 for the Bonds that have done more than one film, or even one from each film. But I think if you took Bond's coolest moment from For Your Eyes Only, it would 100% be this bit where, the rock climbing is amazing, but in terms of pure coolness. Him standing in that archway. I'd
Yeah.
love to get a poster of that. I think that looks so good.
I think,
That would
I
definitely
mean,
be.
we could potentially go on for hours debating that. But like, for example, you would probably have Connery at the casino table in Dr. No, wouldn't you? Do you know what I mean? That would probably be his like moment. And I think for Roger, like, there's so many for Roger though. In the
You'd have
sense
to do
that
one for each film, I think.
you would have to, because obviously you look at Spy, and you know that there's so many opportunities for it in Spy, and all that kind of stuff. But that shot, man, is brilliant. I really love that. And of course, it wraps up as well, because obviously when Locke is kind of hanging off the side in the car, there's that moment which is pure revenge, and I love it, because you have to. And I know Roger didn't like this bit, did he? He really didn't like it, but he didn't. You know, he felt that perhaps it was Bond, but it wasn't Roger's Bond. Do you know what I mean? That would do that. But you have to have that thing whereby you see Bond do something really cold-blooded. I mean, the obvious one for Pierce would be when he shoots Electra point blank in the face. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's like a whoa, like, because obviously Pierce is more of a light-hearted Bond as well. You know, he's got that going on. But to see him, like, you know, where she goads him and is like, "Oh, you wouldn't kill me," or whatever, and then bang, he just shoots her in the face. That takes you out of it for a minute, doesn't it? And you go,
definitely.
"Whoa, I wasn't expecting that," you know. And I think you get the same, especially comparing the previous 4 Rogers to this one, whereby you see him being really cold-blooded. And I think you just, that, because it's such a difference to Rogers' previous, it really stands out as like a key moment. And I think, and they did say in the extras, like the making of documentary, that like that this moment they feel like kind of defined Roger in the 80s is Bond, because obviously the last 3 movies, maybe Octopussy notwithstanding, but like, or some moments in Octopussy, but the last 3 movies are definitely more down to earth, aren't they, than the first 4. It's definitely, those last 3 movies, there's definitely a different tone to them than the previous ones, without a doubt. And this was like the moment they kicked all that off. But the interesting thing about this was obviously there was the debate where just throwing the pin into the car would be enough to take it over the edge. And I think that's what Roger was pushing for. Like, just throw the pin in, and just that little bit of weight was enough to kick it over the edge. But then the argument was like, no, like him booting the car off the side is so much more powerful. What do you think about that?
Well, I tried to picture that scene with just a pin, and it could have worked in terms of Bond just tossing in the pin and just watching the car slide. And I like in the real thing how it does actually cause it to at least move. Yeah. But the impact just wouldn't have been anywhere near as much as seeing Bond sort of kick it off the cliff. You know, his revenge, and the fact he says, "You left it." What does he say? You left this with Ferrara, I believe, and he tosses it. You know, that's not. You know, it's a revenge. Okay, Ferrara. It's not the biggest revenge in terms of, you know, we don't quite feel it as much, but the scene I think is brilliant. Man. And I think with that is like when Karen Bay dies, you really feel it, don't you? Do you know what I mean? Definitely.
Whereas with this one, I feel like Luigi, he's almost like he's only a couple of inches away from being a Nigel Small Fawcett. Do you know what I mean? He's not a character that you really warm to. He's just sort of like almost like a little comedy spy that's thrown in the middle there with his whole get up and all the rest of it. You know, what his little outfit and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like the impact of his death, like, isn't as much as you would like for a payoff like this. But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters, because you remember this scene, man, don't you? You really do. And I think it's even more impactful because it's Roger and you've never seen him do anything like this before. So do you think it, because obviously Roger was like, I don't feel that it was my Bond that would do that. Do you feel he's got a point there, or do you think that needed to happen to like give him an edge?
You know, if he hadn't done it, and I don't think it would have had a negative effect on the film if he hadn't done it. I think it still would have been there. Yeah. I just don't think. I think it helps cement it. From Roger being Roger's Bond, looking back at, you know, one or two of the others, where in Man with the Golden Gun, where he slaps Miss Anders, you know, that's not really Roger's Bond either.
True. Yeah.
And so there are moments where his Bond has gone a bit darker. the last two, Spy and Moonraker, were probably so light-hearted that he'd forgotten that his Bond had done anything else in terms of darkness. But I think it definitely needed to happen, and I'm super glad that it did. But also, I love the way that when the car tumbled down and it hits the bottom, you see Locke's body roll out of the window, come out the window, and it looks so realistic.
It does, doesn't it? It
good.
really does. Yeah, I always remember that as a kid.
Amazing.
I wonder how they got that effect, because usually with Bonds, if somebody's falling, it's very obviously a dummy, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You've got that sort of stiff or those sort of wild flailing limbs. Do you know what I mean? Whereas with this, the way he sort of peels out of the driver's window, like it looks like a real, like that actually happened. So that always stuck out to me as a kid, that one.
Apparently that was potluck. They didn't actually realise that, they wanted something to happen, but they didn't realise it would actually come out and look like that. But I mean, how cool is that? It's so good. And then Bond's payoff line as well. He had no head for heights.
Do you know
Sorry,
what?
you do it. Go on.
You beat me to it.
Sorry.
No, the thing with that quip as well, it's the Austin Powers one, isn't it? Do you remember when in Austin Powers where he's like, he'll never be the head of a major corporation, and he rocks out all those ones. I wonder if it was this quip that inspired that. I don't feel like, sometimes you groan a little bit, don't you, at the one liners where you're like, but with this one, it like you've had this really dark moment, and then obviously Roger busts out, he had no head for heights. But it's not like there's Roger being Roger again. No. It's just, for some reason, that works for me, and I think
he means cool. It. He means it. He doesn't he doesn't throw the hint of a quip there in terms of, he doesn't make it lighthearted. He sort of means it when he says it. He says it seriously, and I think that works really, really well. Yeah, absolutely. Which is a great scene. So where do we go from there then?
So next up, we've got some underwater Bond, which is nice. We've got Bond and Melina, and they're diving in those kind of like ruins, the old sort of underwater temple or whatever it is. Yeah. Now, one thing I do not understand is, during this sequence, Melina takes off her air tank and just leaves it at the bottom of the sea. Why does she do that?
That's something I've always questioned, and I think she is, she's a soothsayer. She can see into the future. Yeah. Because obviously it comes in handy later on in the film.
It does, doesn't it?
From a logical point of view, why, aside from what happens later on, why would she do that? And I can't think of I've been diving a couple of times. I've never seen anyone leave their tank at the bottom of the sea and then swim back up. So I really don't know. I guess, is there a logical answer to it? Maybe she's the sort of person that enjoys free diving down to her tank to then put it on underwater.
Maybe, I don't know.
Just as a challenge.
When she signals to Bond, that's what she's doing with the underwater sign language. And he's like, he gets it. Like, okay, like it's the most normal thing in the world. So I don't know. We're going to have to throw that out to the JBR family, I think, and see if anybody has a logical reason why she would take her tank off. Because it just, aside from the fact that they use it to escape from the whole coral thing at the end, I just have no clue why she would leave her tank behind. Yeah,
it is a bit strange. But there we go. I guess there will be a lot. We'll find a reason. There's always a reason somewhere. If we think long enough.
If we think long and hard enough, there will always be a reason. Yeah,
definitely. So they go back onto Melina's boat there, and Rog is rocking a lovely pale yellow short sleeve shirt rather, which is rather fetching. And this is where they look at Havelock's diary, isn't it? And he's written shorthand, and Melina finds out sort of stuff about it, I think. Now, this is interesting. So Bond thinks that Christatos had Havelock murdered so that he could find the St. George's before Havelock did.
Yeah.
Now, if Christatos was partly responsible for it, i.e. via Locke with the mine, then surely he'd know where the St. George's is already. Now, there are two things about that. One, he might know that it was sunk, and he might know the vicinity, but because it is 584 feet deep, he doesn't know where exactly, because stuff can potentially drift, although probably not a big boat. The other thing is that Bond might not know how involved Christatos is, and he actually does know where it is, and he's and he's waiting for Bond or whoever to find it so he can then deactivate the ATAC and then take it off them, because they obviously don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So that could be the answer to that one. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It's as far as I'm aware, and it's so easy sometimes, especially when you're taking notes for when you're watching a film for the podcast. It's easy to, like, just some one little line somebody says can explain something. And I do wonder whether maybe we just missed a key line, that just some, like a throwaway line that we didn't even pay attention to or something that explains that. But yeah, it could be either, couldn't it? I feel it could be either or. But at the end of the day, they meet each other at the wreck, don't they? So
so I think Christatos already knows where it is. Well, he definitely does at that point, because obviously when they go down in the sub, he says that the visitors are there. So I think he definitely knows. They just can't get to they can't take the ATAC without knowing how to, I guess. Anyway, that's my take on it, but give or take, but there we are.
Absolutely.
So I love the fact as well that Melina's dad has had Max for like 30 years. They've been best friends for 30 years. Max is awesome.
Yeah,
I
he's
love
cool,
Max so much. He's wicked, man. He is so good. And Bond says, basically they're about to go diving, aren't they? Obviously, Melina tells him about Neptune. Bond says, okay, great. It's going to be deep. We need a mixture of oxygen and helium at that depth, because air would be useless.
Yeah.
Now, initially I thought, well, does that contradict earlier on where Frederick goes like, how deep is it? And the guy's like, not deep enough, I'm afraid. But then there's a difference between being deep for diving or being deep for a possible rescue. So I'm assuming it's still too deep to do normal recreational diving, but not deep enough to be completely off the radar of anyone.
I would imagine that deep enough would mean too far down to send a diver.
Yeah.
So not deep enough would explain that, I guess. But it's deep enough that you would need a bit of helium in there as well, I guess.
There we go. Exactly. I'd say so. And then basically, so what do you think of the whole Neptune scene?
This is a memorable one for me, because I feel like, you're going back to Thunderball, and you have those little like underwater subs, like little 2-man, 1-man sub kind of things. Awesome, it just reminds me of those. And I really dig. Did you ever see the movie The Abyss?
Oh, a long time ago.
Yeah. I haven't seen that in a long time. But it reminds me of that a little bit, like with the little sort of bubble window at the front,
That's such a cool window there. Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool. I think we need to see some exotic underwater action in a future Bond, man. It's been a long time, and it's such a signature thing for Bond, with the manta rays and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we saw another one, didn't we? In
we
this
certainly
film.
did, absolutely. But I tell you what, my favourite part of this is Bond's amazing yellow waterproofs. I think that is brilliant, and I think that's a carry-on from The Spy Who Loved Me's yellow ski suit. Obviously, when Bond is needing like terrain-specific wear, he goes for the bright yellow for Roger, for sure.
Well, don't forget as well, the spacesuit in Moonraker,
of course,
is yellow as well. He loves the yellow one piece going on.
The yellow one
awesome,
piece, completely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So if you had Neptune yourself, if you actually owned Neptune, would you use it to perv on bathers underwater?
The thought would have never crossed my mind, Chris, actually, to be honest with you. But now you've mentioned it, yes. Yeah. Though I would imagine you would get a better field of view if you just took the Lotus down there and you swanning around in that. Yeah. Which is interesting, isn't it? That we get a traditional submarine in this one instead of him reproducing if he's got a car that can do it, why not just take that down there? So it's interesting.
It got blown up though, didn't it?
Oh, of course it did. Yeah, completely. Yeah.
The other one. Yeah. So now this is cool. So they go down, basically. They find the St. George's. They know where it is. And you see the mine impact on the sides where the massive hole is, which is pretty cool. Now they get geared up. They don't use fins either, which is, they've just got their boots, but I suppose all they're doing is walking across, so that's all right. And Christatos, like we said, realises there's a visitor below, so he's obviously knows all about it. But there's a funny bit where basically, they're short on, their oxygen helium supply. They've only got like 8 minutes or something, so they have to work pretty fast. Okay, so Bond says to Melina, look, just try and conserve your oxygen supply, because we haven't got long. And then they head towards the St. George's, and this shark comes bolting out of the mine hole, and he's like, I hope he's dining alone. And like, that's so good. I like there's always time for a quip, even when oxygen is running out, and it could result in a nasty case of dying.
Yeah.
There's always time for a good quip. Did you like that one?
Absolutely. I mean, there are some sort of necessities in life, oxygen being one of them, but at the end of the day, that's not important when it comes to getting a good quip out. So I'm on board with that for sure. But I tell you what though, man, like the sequence when they actually enter the wreck and there's all the bodies just kind of like floating around, that is super creepy, man. And can you imagine actually being down there in the dark like that and just seeing all these corpses? But what I really like about that part as well is obviously Melina has a little freak out and she has a little scream, but Bond is just so calm about it, and he was like, I think you should wait back at the Neptune or whatever. And she's like, no, and she kind of gathers herself. But for Bond, seeing that does nothing to him whatsoever. No, he's just cool as ice. I like that.
That's a really good point. I didn't kind of pick up on that, but that's completely that's 100%. And it is creepy. Like I remember being young and jumping when Melina jumped at the body, but you're seeing it all. Yeah. And that is and it's quite confined as well. It's a small space. So, which adds to the creepiness. But then now this is a point where things start to go a bit strange. So we cut to someone else's perspective, and we hear this Darth Vader-like breathing, along with like the Jaws theme tune playing out. Yeah. And obviously we eventually find out it's the guy in the massive JM diving suit. And he sort of breaks in and it's like, dun, 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 and he's got these claws. Now, what's your whole take on that, and particularly the music that they decided to go for? What do you think?
I think it's kind of like, obviously it's not the Jaws music, but it's very reminiscent of the Jaws music, isn't it? But I think like it's one of those things like you get that random scene in Moonraker where he's just dressed up as a cowboy trotting along for no reason whatsoever. I think that still makes me laugh. But I to be honest, it didn't stand out as a dodgy moment for me. This whole scene feels very much like a horror film, doesn't it? It's like as soon as you see all those kind of corpses floating around, and then you've got the bad guy's perspective as he's kind of approaching, going through the little dark corridors of the wreck in that soundtrack. So it's different for sure. Like I don't think we've ever seen anything like that in a Bond film before or since. Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but so it is different. So it's another one of those things where like they are definitely doing some different stuff, especially to the previous three Rogers for sure. But you weren't a fan of that bit. You didn't like it.
Well, I think the actual scene's not bad. I'm just not 100% sure about the score, whether it's almost a bit too slasher horror score. I'd like to see that scene with a different score just to see what it'd be like. Yeah,
to be honest with you, man, like I said last time, I think I feel like that about most of the score in this movie, apart from the one piece that I discussed last time. If you want to know what piece that is, make sure you listen to part one. Don't know why you'd be listening to part two before you listen to part one. But the Citron Chase music is legendary.
That is legendary.
But it is. I feel like the whole score to this movie is just a bit weird and a bit unusual. Yeah. But again, maybe conscious effort to do something new. Do you know what I mean? I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I tell you something that did actually make me laugh was Bond's sort of reaction when they actually find the ATAC, when he goes, "Eureka!" And I was like, that to me just feels a bit off. I'm like, I can't imagine Bond saying that. I can't imagine Rogers Bond saying that. It was an unusual word for him to use, but
that was strange. Yeah, it was strange, but it's quite cool. Like obviously when that guy turns up and Bond gets hit pretty much straight away and hits the deck, and then the bad guy sort of grabs Melina pretty close to the crotch, but probably a little bit higher than that, and basically shoves her up to the ceiling, and her air hose sort of gets hit, so she's losing oxygen anyway, and she's obviously freaking out a bit more, and basically he sort of steals the ATAC off her, doesn't he, in those claw things? And it does look like the actual suit with the claws. It does look, it is a scary looking thing, isn't it? You wouldn't want to be in just a wetsuit with this guy in that thing. It's a bit like almost reminds me a bit of Alien, Sigourney Weaver. In that thing. It's always reminded me a bit of that, which is a bit strange. But yeah, so Melina's sort of suffering. Bond, I think, gets a bit of a slice on his arm. We see a bit of blood, but then he takes the thermite charge from the ATAC and slaps it on the diving suit. Obviously the magnetic on the diving suit. So this guy's inside, and he can sort of hear this ticking. And I think he pushes like a filing cabinet or whatever it is under Bond. So Melina's sort of got out of there. Bond's trapped under this thing, and this guy's got the ATAC. And basically, you know, Bond somehow manages to sort of slip from underneath this cabinet, however. And you could just see the guy sort of going, "What the hell is that ticking?" Yeah. And obviously he knows what it is. And you can just as it's about to go, you see him sort of mouth the words, don't you? He's just about to say,
"Shit."
What's he about to say? Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And Bond and Melina are just at the edge of where the mine blast was when the explosion goes off. And I like that big, massive sort of air that almost sort of forces them off the boat from the blast, which is pretty cool. But for me, I don't know. I think that part of the film is intriguing, just because I don't think there's many things like it in Bond that we've seen before, like you mentioned. So,
fast forwarding somewhat, it's almost like the sequence in Tomorrow Never Dies when they're exploring the wreck of the Devonshire.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's that similar sort of claustrophobic nature. But it's, for me, this is quite a frantic sequence. Because if you imagine, like, a lot of people criticise the diving scenes in Thunderball move too slowly, something I completely disagree with. I think it's great. Yeah. And this one, I imagine it's tough to do an underwater fight and keep it exciting. Yeah. Because everybody's moving so slowly. But I think the claustrophobic nature of it, and the fact that, like, you probably do the same thing that I do. Whenever somebody's underwater and they have no air, you hold your breath to see how long you could last.
Totally.
And like, that panic that Melina's going through with all the oxygen sort of pissing out into the water, like, for me, it's like, I can't help but, like, imagine what that's like. And like Bond being trapped underneath that shelf or whatever it is that gets pushed over on top of him, like, that's super claustrophobic. And I kind of think, like, I do, like, it's not a standout scene by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, but I like that close knit, like, it's very dark, very claustrophobic, and very frantic fight. I think. Yeah, that little sequence.
It puts the willies up you, doesn't it?
It certainly does, indeed. Yeah.
But speaking about that, about the holding your breath thing, there are two films I think you should try and do it to, both of which are extremely difficult. Okay, one is a Bond film.
Okay,
and it's, can you guess which one?
You Only Live Twice.
No, it is. I've done that one lots. That's a good one. This one is The World Is Not Enough with Pierce. You know when he has to swim out the sub and swim around and go back in? That is killer to try and do.
Yeah, I've tried
that one is a killer to try and do. And I'll tell you another film. It's not a Bond film, but Mission Impossible 5 Rogue Nation. Have you seen that?
I have, yeah.
It is a banger of a film. I love that film. And you know where he has to jump down into that sort of swirling circular, very Ken Adam-like set.
Yeah.
Try and hold your breath to that. That one, the Brosnan one, I've managed to do. The Mission Impossible one, I haven't quite got there yet, but it's a killer. But it's good.
Man, I always do it in the scene in You Only Live Twice where they smell the phosgene gas, and with the phosgene gas, and they jump over the side. I always do that one. The torpedo's another one, but World Is Not Enough. I remember trying that one and failing miserably, because there's that bit where he's up against the bulkhead and he's like taking the last breath before he goes down. Man, that's a tough one. Yeah, for sure.
It is a tough one, but it's a cool thing. It's funny we both do that. I wonder, any of our JBR listeners, if you do that as too, let us know. And if you know of any good films to do it to, we'll give it a go.
So be careful trying this at home, because it could be very dangerous. That must be thrown in there.
Well done.
But yeah, cool. So you think that's it, really, at this point? They've escaped. The dude's kind of been blown up. They get back to the Neptune just in time to get into the airlock, and just as Melina's kind of running out of air. But then we get broadsided by another sub, a little one-man sub with his little kind of claws on there, and he's like ripping apart the cables on the Neptune and all that kind of business. So yeah. Do you remember what that one-man sub is called?
Oh no, I've forgotten.
You
For
saw
the
through
life
my
of me,
plan. Damn it!
I can't remember why. Well, I tell you what, this is another scary bit where they're like the claws of the diving suit, but it's similar claws on the one man sub, and you sort of get the front rudders or whatever it is of the submarine, and when he gets that drill and he starts to drill into the windscreen or the window of the sub, that's like, man, if that goes, that's it, you're a goner. So that's quite a scary bit, isn't it? And I think basically Neptune then is just that little bit bigger, that little bit more powerful, and manages to sort of basically push the one-man sub back into where the mine sort of created the explosion, the hole in the ship. And it almost gets jammed in there, doesn't it? And then the Neptune kind of reverses, and you see the wires connecting to the claws sort of break away of the other one, and they're sort of going backwards. And you know what? I think it's a really... What do you think of this scene, actually? Let's see what you think first.
Again, it's another one of those where there's layers to the scene, isn't it? You've got that real close kind of super frantic fight, and then you've got them escaping. There's a moment of relief where she gets her breath back in the kind of airlock, and then bang, you're attacked again. So it's another one of those where there's just different kind of levels. But I suppose it adds a little bit of tension in there because there's water pissing into the Neptune left, right, and centre, and it's all like race against time to kind of get rid of this dude and all the rest of it. I think it was good.
There's a couple of things. One, if you picture yourself in a submarine with another submarine right next to you, and you can see the guy. They're probably only like a foot or 2 feet away from each other. It's obviously the thick glass, the water, and the thick glass of the other sub. But you can see them, and like he's basically got a drill coming next to you, and you can always touch him if it wasn't for the distance for the glass sort of thing. I think that's a really cool sort of moment if you can picture yourself inside. The only thing that I wasn't sure about, which it's not a huge thing by any means, but I love the fact that they ram him back into that hole, and he gets stuck there, and then they go away. But for the briefest of moments, it cuts back to him, and then you see the one man sub sort of get away, sort of maneuver itself out of the hole. And I don't think we needed that, because I love that shot where the one man sub is stuck in the hole, and you're tracking back with the Neptune as it reverses, and the light in the one man sub is getting fainter and fainter, and you just see the guy is stuck in there, and basically he could be stuck in there forever now. And I don't know.
There was no real need for him to escape, was there?
No. I think it would have been nice if it had just been left there. But it's obviously only a minor thing.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
A minor thing. Oh.
Hey, so this next bit, again, this is a classic piece of Fleming, obviously taken from Live and Let Die, and it's one of those sequences that is just such a it's something. If I was writing a book, I would never compose a scene like that. If you're thinking like, what's a good villain's death for a hero? Do you know what I mean? Like, what would the villain try and do? I wouldn't ever imagine something like this. It's almost like it harks back to those old cowboy films, isn't it? When they get the guy tied on the back of the end of the horse and they drag him along the ground for ages and just basically scrape all their skin off and stuff. But it's basically that, but in the water over coral. And it's so cool, man, to see all that classic Fleming stuff has just been sort of pasted together. And it could so easily have been very boxy and very okay, well, here's this scene and now here's this scene. For me, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like, obviously, it's things taken from various Fleming stories made into one long flowing piece. And I think it just works perfectly, man. It just works really well. And like I said earlier, Roger looks the business in this scene. He's got his blue V-neck on and his khaki pants on. And pants, that's me. I'm spending too much time in America, man. Khaki trousers on. They're obviously tied up on the back of Christatos' boat and all the rest of it. I think that scene is brilliant, and it's easily one of the most memorable Roger sequences for sure in this whole series. For me, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, completely. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? The amount of times we've said, "Oh, this is one of the best scenes in the film." We mentioned the car chase. We mentioned the ski chase. We've got the climbing to come. We mentioned the attack on the warehouse, and this one is another banger, right up there as well. I like the part. Obviously, they don't even know Christatos is there. They get off the sub, and suddenly, you know, they're under gunpoint. Christatos and Eric Kriegler is there, and Apostas, and they steal the ATAC. They take it inside, and Krieger's like, I'll take it and deliver you the money. And Christatos like, no. Well, you know, we're going to a place designated by me. And that shows that he doesn't work. He's not a KGB agent like Kriegler is, basically, isn't he? He's a KGB agent. He works for Gogol. Christatos is basically being employed rather than works as an agent for them. So that's quite a nice sort of device.
He's like sort of in a mercenary working for the highest bidder kind of thing. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. I think that's pretty cool.
What I enjoyed about this scene is Kriegler has some of the most brilliant 80s dubbing in the whole thing, because I don't think you hear him speak until this point, do you? He's like totally silent for the whole movie. And then he's got that sort of like Rocky IV, Dolph Lundgren style dubbing going on, which is brilliant, because you know that dude doesn't have that voice. It amuses
Definitely
me a lot.
Yeah, and it's another Grant I like, though, with a rushboard stomach, the tan, the blonde hair, and all that, isn't it? But it's quite cool where Christatos, obviously, this is the point where he says, right, we're going to take the ATAC to St. Cyril's. And obviously, we know that someone's been listening, which is pretty cool for later on. Yeah, so they go back outside. They're tied up, and Christatos drives off in the boat with his mates. And that bit where they're like holding on together, you see the rope flying out.
Yeah.
And basically, Bond says, you know, Melina's like pretty much, well, this is it. And Bond's like, we're not dead yet. You know, eternal optimist, which is quite cool. But the way that you see the rope just fly past and then hikes him off the boat, that's so cool. I really like that bit. In fact, this whole scene's amazing because, you know, there is a bit of a potential how they filmed it. You know, one, I don't know if we should say this or not. There's a potential spoiler behind how they did this, but the way that it looked so good. And you're seeing these people being dragged across the coral. You see it get cut and then blood coming, and you see the sharks, and obviously they're tied up. And when the boat is kind of doing laps, you know, or doing the same route, and it gets to the end of the one, and Christopher's like, turn it around, we'll go again. And as they turn it around, Bond's like, take a deep breath, and they both dive down, and Bond gets his sort of wrists over like a bit of coral, and he's moving them to and fro to try and cut the rope, doesn't he? And just as it's about to go, his hands are free, and then they're pulled away. And again, they get cut through the coral, and it you know, it's the sort of thing where, again, you're putting yourself in that situation. This is another one where you kind of hold your breath as well. This is definitely a scene where I hold my breath. Plus, you're thinking, you know, oh, crap, I've got razor-sharp coral digging into me as well. And it's a great scene. And then it gets to that a point where, again, where the boat's about to turn around, and like they go down again, and this time he takes the main rope around this massive bit of coral, and he's holding it, and the boat's pulling the other way, and you see the rope has been so taut, and it's like almost, you know, is the coral going to break or not? Is the rope going to break? And like Bond, you can see in his face, he's like holding on, isn't he? And then obviously eventually the rope snaps, and then that life buoy flies out of the water and hits the guy off the boat, and then the sharks obviously come in for a bite to eat, but this next bit I love the bit where...
Now listen, I'm just going to stop you there, Chris, because I had never known this about this sequence, right? And I think it is the most incredible piece of filmmaking I have ever seen in all my life. Now, I know that's a big statement, but allow me to expunge upon that. Expunge is not the right word, but you know what I'm saying. Explain. Right, there we go.
Expand, explain.
Now, in the making of documentary, they talked about shooting these scenes, and I cannot believe this, right? But when you go back, you can kind of tell a little bit. But basically, old Carol Bouquet had some sinus issues and couldn't go underwater, so they couldn't shoot these scenes, right? So what you see is them basically shooting the scenes with, I would imagine, like some sort of blue filter over the lens of the camera. And they're filmed with fans blowing on them, so their hair moves around. And then the film is slowed down into super slow motion to simulate the fact that they're underwater. So let me just go through that again. They are not underwater at all, right? They are being blown with fans, so their hair goes around as if they're underwater, and then the film is played back at slow motion with a blue filter over the lens. I think that looks incredible. And like I have never, until I watched that documentary, I had no idea that they weren't underwater there. And the only thing that's a real kind of giveaway, to my eyes anyway, is some of the bubbles that go up look a little bit sort of animated and a little bit off compared to the real bubbles. But other than that, man, I think that is incredibly unbelievable filmmaking, like super genius to like come up with that solution.
Even when you know it's being done, like you said, aside from even like most of the bubbles are good. That was actually done with Alka-Seltzer in water to create the bubbles, and then plated on afterwards. So the levels of ingenuity that they went to achieve what they needed to achieve, like you said, it's unbelievable. And you know, if you hadn't seen, if you hadn't heard of it and hadn't seen the documentary or anything like that. You know, sometimes you see films and they're obviously doing something that's not quite right, and you can spot it a mile off. You know, this is just done so smoothly that it is a genius bit of filmmaking. Because prior to like not knowing, you'd never spot it in a million years. And even if you're knowing it, and that's if you're looking hard to try and find it, it's only the occasional little bit of bubbles which might not be right, but. You know, it's amazing. It's a combination of like, I think Derek Meddings was part of it, obviously John Glenn and all the various people that had their moment in it. It is unbelievable. Yeah,
and if that is news to you like it was to me, go back and watch that sequence because it's just mind-blowing that they're not underwater. It just looks totally like they're underwater during that sequence.
Obviously, these are for the close-ups of when you can see Bond's face and you can see Melina's face. There are obviously the wide shots where you've got the stunt guy and girl who are actually being dragged through the water, which is equally as impressive, to be honest. But this whole scene is just... And the fact it's Fleming just makes it like, so good, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously that scene was taken from the Live and Let Die book, which was obviously Roger's first film. So it's nice and appropriate. But obviously Christatos makes a fatal error here, doesn't he? Because obviously when they don't resurface, he just assumes...
Well, there was a bit just prior to that when they come out after taking off the ropes and Christatos like, run them down. And I love this bit because, you know, you can imagine two little heads bobbing about in the water and there's this massive boat just charging straight for them, you know, creating the waves in the wake, sort of. It's just bombing it towards them. And you're like, hurry up with the ropes. And I always thought to myself, I just would have dived down and deal with the ropes underwater. I wouldn't have waited on the surface to do it. But obviously, for the tension, it's so good. And obviously they just get it in time and just literally go under as the boat goes over, but that also adds to it as well. I think that's great.
Totally, but at that point, Christatos makes the fatal Bond villain error of just assuming the sharks have got them, and he buggers off. He gets cracking with wherever he's off to, and then so this is the moment with the air tank payoff, whereby they happen to be right by that temple. They swim along. And there it is, and they've got Melina's air tank, and that's kind of how they do it in evade capture. So again, still not sure why she left the tank there, but it was very useful to them in the long run, wasn't it? Yeah. Maybe,
like I said, maybe going free diving down to something is good fun, so maybe that was part of it. But in terms of besides pleasure, why you'd do it, maybe there was... it's hard to come up with an answer. I don't know. Yeah, maybe they're going to do
to the JBR family if there is a plausible reason.
I've got one. Maybe if they're going to do a mega dive, but she's not strong. Like she doesn't like wearing two tanks. She takes one tank down with her to do a diving, but she wants to stay down longer. So she then changes from the empty tank to the full tank underwater to continue her diving.
Maybe that is true. Yeah. All right. So that's solved.
We'll go with that.
we came up with it in the end. Sorted.
There we
go. So then obviously they go back to the boat.
Do you think they climb up a bit quickly here or not? Because you see Christatos' boat going away, and it's obviously going in the other direction.
Yeah.
But it's still, you know,
I would have
If I was-
waited a little bit longer.
I would have
must be
waited a
said.
little bit longer
Yeah.
just to be on the safe side. But that shot of them walking up the ladder is very much like a Valenka from Casino.
It is.
Remember walking up
Very
the
much
sheep
so.
boat? Same
Yeah,
sort
yeah.
of thing, I think.
Exactly
But
the
I
same
would
shot. Yeah.
I would have waited probably a little bit too. But still, they got on board, which is cool.
Good stuff.
Just to them.
So back on the boat, they're like, "Oh no, we've lost the ATAC. There's no way we're going to find it now. They could go anywhere. It's probably in Moscow already." And then Max pipes up, and what does he say? Give me your best Max impression.
Okay. Oh shit. Attack to cells. Oh, that shit.
That sounded like a fucking robot. ATAC 2 zeros. ATAC 2 zeros. Yeah, that was great, man. That's gone down as your best impression ever. That one.
Oh, wait a minute. I can't do it. Wait, sorry. Can you? Oh, sorry. Can
I'll
you
bust
do it?
out my
Go
Max
on,
because I know
go
this
on.
is what I
That'll
can
be
do.
good.
ATAC 2 zeros. ATAC 2 zeros. There
That's
it
a
is.
good one. That's a
Thanks,
good one. It's
That's-
better than my robot version.
ATAC 2 zeros.
Oh, God.
There we go.
That
Love it.
was so bad. Okay.
So good old Max saves the day.
Yeah. He does.
Beautiful.
Now, apparently, Roger wasn't too into that.
Was he
He
not?
thought it was a bit silly, particularly with the way that they wanted this film to be, and apparently he wasn't too into that. But I love it. I love
Yeah.
the fact that Max lets him know, and he rocks it. And
I mean, especially for a Roger film. I mean, do you know what I mean? That's interesting that he had those thoughts. But yeah. So next up, we have our first little glimpse of St. Cyril's, and we also have our little glimpse of good old Michael G. Wilson in his cameo. Now, I did a bit of freeze framing, and I actually got a photo for this one because it's another one of those that's super blink and you miss it style.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
definitely.
You could easily not see this. So he's obviously the priest. There's obviously, when it flashes to St. Cyril's, there's a couple getting married, and he's the priest. And if I just hold it up to the screen, let me just make sure you can see
there we
that.
go. Yes, a good one.
There he is.
Nice. There
There
he is.
is
Look at that.
Mickey G.
Good man.
So
Good to
there you
see
go.
him.
I don't think there's one more blink and you miss it than the Spectre cameo, but that's pretty close.
That's pretty
nonetheless.
close. Yeah, definitely.
But,
It's cool. That it's
But there we go. So yes, we've got dude, I love this moment. So
It's
we
awesome.
get Bond walking into the church. He gets into the confession booth. Oh man, this is one of my favourite Q lines, man. Bond gets in there. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. That's putting it mildly, 007. Oh man,
so good.
I
so
love
good.
that. I love it so much. And it's Q in the field, which I always love to see. Good old Desmond, man. Brilliant stuff.
Definitely. I love the fact as well, like, Roger, I don't know if you noticed it, but when Roger first walks into that church, there's this little old lady sweeping, and she gives him such a dirty look, as in like, what are you doing in my church type thing. But if you haven't seen it, have a look because it's quite cool. Yeah, but this scene is so good, and he walks in, goes into confession box, and it is just magic, isn't it? That is pure Bond magic. I love that bit, and I don't think there'd be anyone that wouldn't love this scene. Like Q doing a classic line, and it's such a cool little setting as well. And obviously the purpose of it is that Bond, mentioned about St. Cyril's, and Q was like, there are 439 St. Cyril's in Greece. Heaven knows to which one, Christatos has taken the ATAC.
Yeah.
And then Bond's like, "Oh, it's all right, Q. Don't worry. I've got a buddy that can sort us out." So, but yeah, that scene I think is fantastic, and that line is a classic. In fact, I've got something to say about that later on, which I didn't actually know about. So,
all right. Is that going to be a Bond fact, Chris?
It might certainly be a Bond fact, Tom. Yes, indeed.
Very nice.
So the next scene then, obviously, now this is pretty epic as well. Another cracking scene that is, they go to Meteora, the St. Cyril's monastery. And it's quite funny because Bond, Melina, Columbo, and Columbo's three buddies are all dressed up as monks as they're walking up the mountain pathway. But do you know what I love about this scene?
Go on.
Is like from this point, all the way through to sort of when Gogol arrives, it's almost like an old school World War II film. Like the atmosphere of trying to sort of hijack into some remote mountaintop lair. It's almost, when we watched Where Eagles Dare, and you've got that castle in the mountains, and it's got that type of feel, like a small team trying to sneak their way into somewhere. And I just really like the like I said, the atmosphere around it. It's such a cool scene.
You know me, man. I love Sneaky Bond. I love it when he's trying to sneak in somewhere, either as part of a small group or as a one-man army. And he's either in disguise or he's just sneaking around in camouflage sort of dark outfits or whatever it is. I love that stuff. It's one of my favourite things, and I want to see more of that in the future. But I tell you what, man, the reason that line about there being 430 odd St. Cyril's is, and which one, the reason why they find this one obviously is Columbo instinctively knows where he's going to have gone, because they used to hide from the Germans during World War II there, because they were in the Greek resistance together, which I think was a really nice little bit of backstory kind of thrown together. Obviously we mentioned that last time, but like that was a really cool little bit of history kind of thrown in there as well, I think. Now, the actual St. Cyril's monastery is another one of those iconic villain lairs, isn't it, for Bond, isn't it? I think this is one of those where you show anybody a picture of that from a distance, and they might not be able to tell you which Bond film it's from, but they will know, that was definitely in a Bond film at some point. They will just know it's such an iconic image, that one. And I think it's another one of those, like when they stumbled across the crater for Spectre, when they must have clapped eyes on that, they must have been like, whoa, perfect. And it's the same with this, man. Like, you couldn't get a more visually striking villain's base, I don't think.
I think this is one to add to the locations list to visit. Imagine rocking up, seeing that cliff from miles away, seeing the rock from miles away. And then, I don't know, if you get a basket up to it, or if you get a big ladder or what, but just getting up to that area, that would be so good. I think that's one to definitely try and get on the cards.
Without a doubt, man. I would rather go up by a safer mode of transport than Bond uses, though, for sure. I don't fancy that climb.
Well, it's when they're looking at it, they've got that shot and they're in the distance, and Columbo sort of saying, he's been studying the place for years for just such an occasion, which is obviously fortunate, but also realistic, obviously, with the Greek resistance. He tells Bond to go up the right side, which is obviously the best because it's not as well guarded and it hasn't got the shed and stuff like that. But it also looks like the hardest part of the climb, because there's a bit where it sort of juts out quite far, doesn't it? And I tell you what, it looks some pretty hardcore climbing.
Do you know what, man? This sequence, again, like we get a brief cut to the inside where BB has a little scuffle with Christatos because he wants to move to Cuba and all that kind of stuff and all the rest of it. But, man, this climb is another one of those game-changing sequences. And again, this is another one, like we said last time, there's so many sequences in this where you get no music whatsoever, and it just either kicks in a bit towards the end or maybe at the beginning, but the bulk of the action sequence is complete silence, and it's the same with this one. And I would say this is probably the only sequence that's super appropriate for, because it's like anything where you're hanging with big wide open space, just the sound of the wind would be enough to illustrate how massive that drop is, but that climb, man, is incredible. So you've got, obviously he's free climbing up the first bit, and then he's putting in the little pitons or whatever you would call them and roping himself up and climbing and all the rest of it. Now, who is it doing the stunt work this time, Chris? Enlighten me.
It is our pal, Mr. Rick Sylvester, the same dude who also did the parachute jump at the start of Spy. Now, this man has got some balls.
I was going to say, I imagine his testicles are larger than anybody else's on this entire planet, man, because there is no way, you wouldn't get me skiing off the mountain. I've never even been skiing, so, that's probably going to put the kibosh on that. But with this climb, you've got that, obviously he's climbing up that massive drop on its own. And then you get the sequence where he's kind of nearing the top and the henchman comes along, spies what's going on. And I thought the henchman himself is quite ballsy in the sense that he's just got that one little rope that he holds onto, and he's hanging off the side, hammering off the pitons. That is the right word to use, isn't it, piton?
Yeah, for those ones,
Yeah.
yeah. He uses, there's a cam, which is the thing where it's like a metal spring, which he uses, and then after that, he uses the pitons, yeah.
Right.
He should have used, Diamonds Are Forever, the piton gun. If he had
He
one of those, he would have been
done.
all right, wouldn't
yeah,
he?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Q's let him down. But then each one of those that he hammers out, and there's a huge drop for Bond. Like there's like one shot in particular where there's just that massive drop off the side, and he's just like, and he falls for what seems like ages, and then the rope catches, and like, imagine what that would feel like to be hanging off the side and then all of a sudden have that massive drop, and then how jarring that must be when you hit the bottom of the rope and it actually catches you. Do you know what I mean? Man,
Definitely.
that is a total game-changing sequence. That, and again, I would wager that this is like a proper, super iconic sequence for the whole series. And it's another one I don't think gets the kudos that it should get.
No, I completely agree as well, because it's the build up to it as well. We see him, like we said, put in the pitons. Apostis is the name of that sort of henchman guy, and when Bond gets to the top, he kicks him, and you see Bond roll and almost try to grab onto this rock, but it's a loose one, and he sort of carries it over the edge with him. But like you said, that drop and the sound, I love the sound of, like you said, the wind is all you need, and then when he drops, you just hear the sound of the ropes being pulled, sort of, and it's like, whoa, and you can sense your kind of groin area being tugged as if it had a harness on it, and it's like, wow. And I think they had to use a special sort of, they use sort of sandbags to try and slow down the impact of the actual bottom of the drop where the rope sort of bottoms out, which they had to do because otherwise you would have been severely injured, but it was still painful. But that drop, I've done quite a bit of climbing, and to purposefully go off like a rock face or a cliff is just, it's pretty crazy, but it's such a good jump. But then, do you know what is ingenious? Is that he's hanging on the end of this rope, and what does he do? He takes off his shoelaces so he can then make prusik knots. Now these knots...
This is something I was going to ask about, because I couldn't quite work out what he was doing, but you've obviously got some specialist climbing knowledge here, so lay it on me, man. What's going on?
Okay, so prusik knots, there's a certain knot that you can tie, it's called a prusik, and it's got two... So you say you got the main rope that we know, the main climbing rope. No, a prusik knot you tie in two different places around that main rope. And it's a knot where if it's pulled down, so if there's weight on it, it holds. But what you can do is you can then move one up and use the weight on the other and change in between. So basically you can climb up a rope using these knots. So he's got two of them, so he can put his weight on one while he slides up the other, puts his weight on that and slides up the other, so he can go up the main rope by using these, which is an incredibly sort of clever thing to do. And then obviously while he's getting towards the top, he obviously drops a couple of times when the other pitons are knocked out, and he climbs back up to the top when just as Apostis is about to knock out the third, and he gets that sort of flat throwing knife type thing or whatever it is, and see Apostis sort of fall down, and then he grabs onto Apostis's rope and uses that to climb up. But that whole shoelacing I thought was super clever as well.
Man.
Really
that
good.
whole sequence is banging. We've got an iconic base and an iconic sequence of Bond getting to that base, man. And again, that big fall that he does is like should get so much more attention than it does, because that is an absolutely banging stunt.
It's up there. It's up there with all the big ones. You're right though. It obviously Spy is so iconic and cinematic, but this should be within those type of in that area. And you're right. It doesn't get as much as it does as it should do. The one thing I wanted to mention slightly off topic was the fashion that we see Roger Moore in here. Like, I think For Your Eyes Only, we see him in more diverse styles than anything else. I suppose it correlates to where he is, but the big blue ski jacket, you've got that pale yellow shirt, the navy double-breasted thing that he wears earlier. Obviously now he's in like this chunky wool knit sweater with like a nice navy gilet that he's wearing, sporting, which is pretty cool. And I guess he probably wears more different stuff in this film than any other, I'd imagine. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say as it is a more understated wardrobe than some of his previous efforts. That's for sure. But yeah, I think the one that sticks in mind, well, that double-breasted is the Roger Moore uniform, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it's when you see Roger at events, that's what he's rocking. That's like the Roger Moore look. So I wonder if he had a hand in that. But yeah, I guess the least Bond like, apart from his waterproofs in the Neptune sequence, is the blue gilet with his sort of like pebble dash grey jumper on underneath. But there you go. But yeah, so basically he climbs up, goes into the sort of little shed with the basket and sort of wheels it down for his compadres, and then we get that sequence where the dude kind of spies and he's looking through the window and Bond's like against the wall and all the rest of it.
That's a cool bit.
And that's very, very tense. And what I like is, as they're ascending, he comes around the side to check out the basket, and obviously Melina crossbows him.
Because one of them's about to shoot them, isn't he? And Columbo's like, no. And Melina's like, do the silent.
Yeah. Silent but deadly. But what I like about that is, instead of, you could have just easily had him grab his stomach and fall off the edge again and be another one of those deaths. But I like the fact that he kind of survives it. And then they drag him into the shed and like they're stuffing whatever it is into his mouth to gag him and all the rest of it. I thought that was kind of cool, a nice little touch. But yeah, so at this point, this is all coming to a head now. We see Gogol, he's approaching in his chopper. So it's all coming down to the last minute. And then there's obviously some sort of sneakiness as they're all kind of taking out guards and sort of sneaking through the monastery. And then obviously they come across Bibi and Jacoba. And she points them in the right direction and all that kind of stuff. What I really like, actually, is that scene where they move into the guardhouse and all the guards are asleep and they kind of like just take over the whole room, like shock and awe tactics. I thought that was a nice little touch. And again, that feels like some sort of old World War II kind of movie. If that, like you said, this whole sequence has that vibe about it, which I wonder if there's a film that they modelled this on that it sort of inspired it. It will be good to find that.
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely got that feel. There are a couple of moments just before that which I love. The part where you mentioned about the guard, they drag him back in. I love the fact that even though Melina shot him, she's trying to tend to him, to make sure that the wound's not too bad. Yeah. And like, as they go away, Columbo's like, it's all right, I'll be with you in a moment. And then after Melina's just sort of tended to him, he just goes back and knocks the guy out anyway. I thought that was wicked. Yeah. And there's a moment as well before that where Jacoba Brink is with Bibi and Christatos comes in. And Bibi's like, I want to win the gold medal when she's on the trampoline and stuff.
Now that was a good impression.
Was it? Okay. Well, I can't do parrots, but I can do
16-year-old girls.
Yeah, lovely. But there's a part where she basically says to Christatos, I know what you want from me and you're too old, sort of thing. You're too old for it. Which is interesting because she's well into Bond and he's like 8 years older than Christatos. But obviously in the thing. But I thought that's quite
Bond's
kind of
a different animal though, man. He's a sexy beast. So.
He is. But yeah, so the other thing that I loved about that part where they sort of go in on the guards is it shows you again how cool Melina is. So like even Bond doesn't know this one. Like Bond, Columbo, the men have gone in. The guards get up, and then there's another guard behind the curtain, isn't there? And the gun comes up, and Melina's like, "Move!" and then sort of gets him with a crossbow. And she's awesome. I really, without her, someone could have died.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So then just to kind of like finish it up, it's the climax. It's coming down to the minute. Gogol's landing on the top. He's about to come and get the ATAC. It would have all gone pear-shaped. So we get this little showdown between Bond and Kriegler, which I feel like Kriegler is in the same bracket as Hans is in You Only Live Twice, in the sense that he is. I would say Kriegler is more memorable, like in the sense that he's got that kind of the rifle shooting sequence and all that. But again, I feel like Kriegler could have used like just something a little bit extra in this fight because it's just like a bit anticlimactic, I would say. Yeah. It would have been nice if there was some sort of like, because they had that standoff before where Bond's behind the tree, it would have been nice to have something that he could have done that would have sort of paid that off a little bit or something. Or, we like it when they're hoisted by their own petard. Yeah. It would have been nice if maybe Kriegler had been shot by his rifle or something along those lines. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, but I mean, that would have been great if there was something like that. But again, maybe the tone of the film didn't sort of.
And
it
again,
was hard to
as
work
well,
on that.
it's difficult because we've said the same about Locke and Christatos, that they didn't have that key scene. And I suppose Christatos you could argue, is the dragging across the coral. That could have been his signature moment. But then again, when you've got two henchmen like that, you've got Kriegler as one henchman, Locke is sort of, I would say, the main henchman. It's difficult for them to all have their thing, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, you're just cramming it in there for the sake of it sometimes. Yeah. So maybe the understated route is is the sensible choice for this movie.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I also, there's something that's quite cool in this film, which you don't normally see, is like when Bond and Columbo are together, there's two sort of random guards just outside. And they're battling each other, and the actual guards put up a really good fight. So like Columbo and his guard are punching each other, but Columbo's getting just as bad as the guard is, and Bond is getting hit by this other guy as well. And it's only when they crash through the window into sort of the main area where the other guy's kind of out of it then. But it's nice to see the unspoken sort of bodyguards or guards or whatever actually be quite competent, and you don't get to see that. So that was quite cool. But yeah, I do agree. The battle with Kriegler, it's quite funny because he's about to shoot Bond, and BB steps in and gets a slap. She's already been slapped by Christatos, and now she gets another slap by Kriegler. It's a bit harsh, but anyway. And then they have their little battle, and Bond punches Kriegler in the stomach, and it's hard. Then he tries to punch him again in the stomach, and it's still hard. And it's always like, I'd try something else if it didn't work once.
We needed is that dong sound effect when he hit either of them. Yeah, that's what we needed there.
Yeah. But I think in terms of the payoff, in terms of obviously Kriegler lifts up that sort of heavy concrete plant pot or whatever it is, and then he gets distracted because Christatos takes the ATAC and he's about to walk out, isn't he? Yeah. And that's where Bond uses that. What is it? Is it a candle holder or whatever it is? That big metal grated thing. And he pushes the plant pot out, and then that knocks Kriegler out the window, and then he tumbles down the roof, and BB's like, it's crazy, sort of what she's just seen. But yeah, I think perhaps something else might have been more memorable. But
do you know what though? It's difficult, and for us to criticise that without offering an actual alternative is do you know what I mean? That suggests to me that within the boundaries of this film, there probably wasn't a better choice if we can't come up with something. So
that's true.
So there is that. So we have the kind of the face-off outside. Gogol's at one end. We've got Christatos. And they kind of there's a little bit of a grapple, and the ATAC's kind of up for grabs in a sense, and then there's the moment where Melina is going to shoot Christatos, and Bond stops her. Now, with this little interlude, during this point, Columbo comes up behind. He takes care of Christatos from the rear. Bang! Christatos is game over. Do you think that was more appropriate than Melina having her revenge by crossbowing him in the face?
That is an incredibly good question. And it's a difficult one because it's quite cool that Christatos, had his knife. He was about to kill Bond, and then Columbo got him, and that's all good because there was also their previous rivalry, so there is that backstory. So in terms of Columbo killing him, that works perfectly fine. Yeah. But also the option of Melina killing him, he's the man ultimately responsible for her parents being killed. And, it's the opposite of Domino. Domino in Thunderball got revenge for her brother and managed to kill Largo, whereas here, Melina hasn't been allowed that chance, hasn't she? She hasn't been given that chance. Yeah. Now, if she had killed, obviously, I think that her not killing Christatos almost relates to, Bond's phrase. I don't want to say what it is in case the answer comes up from your question. But you know what I mean. That it kind of relates to that a bit. And I think if she had gone through with it, it would almost go against Bond's phrase in a way. Yeah,
I feel like so it's almost like I would equate Columbo killing him to Kerim Bey shooting Krylenko in From Russia with Love. Like there's an old school debt to be settled there. But for us as the audience, I feel like the emotional payoff would have come from Melina killing him.
Yeah.
And I feel like she should have had that, man. I feel like, I feel like it could have almost been.
She should have saved Columbo from Christos.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is that they should have come out to find them having a scuffle and Christos' knife up to Columbo's neck, and she then harpoons him, crossbows him in the back, and then bang, that would have been, I feel like that would have been a more fitting end. So it was an interesting choice that she didn't get to do that payoff, because I feel like that's what her motivation was throughout the whole thing.
I don't think her character's going to live that down. Not killing him.
Yeah, because she's super she's super woman scorned, isn't she? That's her whole thing.
Completely.
Like Electra, whatever that quote is, she's like she's
Greek women
hell-bent
like
on
Electra always avenge their loved ones.
That's it. Yeah, and she should have been allowed to avenge him, man. She really should have.
I agree. I think that's something that they should have gone with. I think that like the whole Columbo Christos fight is good, but rather than him killing Christos, they could have had a real close battle, maybe with the knives, quite a deadly one. Yeah. But obviously Christos is about to get the upper hand, and like you said, take him out. And I think that would have been better. I think for her character it would have been better as well. But then going from that to the final scene, could she then be happy? In fact, it would probably make her happier. But then, are you, from an ethical point of view, even if someone's killed your family members, if you then kill someone else, does that make you as bad as them? This is where you get that side of things coming
Not
into
if they're super evil. I mean, at the end of the day, she did kill Gonzalez, so that doesn't take away from her. I feel like, I don't know, does this make me a bad person? But I feel if somebody messes with your family, you should be allowed to kill them. Do you know what I mean? In that sense. So I feel like I don't think that would stain her character at all. I'd be like, go on, get him, he deserves it, he's a bastard.
So it's a shame, really. It would have been interesting to see if they'd shot it that way. Sometimes they shoot two alternative endings, and if you got like an extra special features version of her killing him, that would have been quite cool just to see. But it didn't happen, but it's a shame. But then there's the bit afterwards is quite cool, where BB comes out and she's tending to Columbo, and it looks like BB's found a new sponsor. And that
it's a nice little happy ending payoff there. I like it. Yeah.
I bet Columbo's liking it as well, probably. But there we are. Yeah. But I tell you what we have to mention as well is the brilliant line when basically Bond, Gogol. I love the fact that Gogol, and I don't know, I think it's his pilot with him who's got the gun, and they're walking across. Bond's got the ATAC. They're walking to each other, and Gogol just hands up, puts his hand out. And Bond sort of turns away and then flings it. Gogol's mate's about to shoot Bond, and Gogol's like, no, stop, niet, don't, sort of thing. But that shot of the ATAC just spinning through the air is beautiful. And then on impact, just seeing it smash into smithereens is great. But the line that Bond says afterwards is picture perfect for a spy film. Do you remember that line?
That's dead on, comrade. You don't have it. I don't have it.
That was done so well, mate. That was brilliant. That was so good. But, I mean, that is such a perfect line, isn't it? And I love the fact as well that Gogol is just like, has a little chuckle, fair enough. And the fact that he's literally stepped off that helicopter for about 20, 30 seconds and then goes back on and just flies away. I think that's brilliant. I love that. Yeah, really good.
Good stuff. So there it is. Now what we get... If this is sort of like almost, it's not a rebooted Bond, obviously, but it's a reimagined Bond, isn't it? After the last few movies, and it's brought way back down to earth, as we've said, and it's kind of a different angle on the Bond character, a lot more down to earth. What we still get is the signature Bond ending, which I am very appreciative for. Now, this is the kind of ending where in Live and Let Die, you had Bond and Solitaire on the train. In Man with the Golden Gun, you had Bond and Goodnight on the boat. Good night, sir. And then in Spy, you had the perfect keeping the British end up, sir line when they're on the little escape pod thing. And in Moonraker, you have the whole attempting re-entry. We still get one of those to finish off the scene, finish off the movie, even though it's a lot more down to earth. Now, what I love about this is he's on a boat again. He's in the arms of his loved her, his
Loved
lover.
her. He's loved her. He's loved
So,
her.
he bummed her. So there's that. And then we get this comedy injection with Margaret Thatcher coming in at the end there, which I thought was an amusing choice. Like for the cold-blooded thriller, you have this comedy moment on the end where she's talking to Max and, oh, really, Mr. Bond, really? And all that kind of stuff, which I as cheesy as that is, I love it. It's cool, man.
I'm glad you said that because I really enjoy it as well. I think some people aren't too keen on it. I know I've heard that and seen that written quite a few times, but I think it's great. I think it's again, you've got that whole mix up with with MI6 where Q's trying to patch the call and Max is like, thank you, and then like she's getting all excited and stuff like that. Oh, Mr. Bond, and then when he's obviously like, you go and you can do it. Give us a kiss.
Give us a kiss. Oh, really, Mr. Bond? Really?
And like, MI6 lot are like freaking out, and basically Q cuts the call, and Frederick A calls him like an idiot or something like that. But I love that bit. I love the fact that you see Margaret Thatcher sort of hit Dennis's hand, like her husband's hand, as he's trying to steal something. It's just light-hearted, but it's good fun. Yeah. And you see Bond's got that cool Seiko digital watch as well, which is quite good. And basically, they're going for a moonlight swim, and Melina says the title, doesn't she? For
she
Your
does.
Eyes Only, darling.
Yeah.
One of the which I think is pretty cool. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Absolutely.
And they go for their moonlight swim, and then the watch gets tossed over by Max, and you see it sort of
there it is.
go through.
Yeah. What a way to do it. I think what you had to do is you had to have that ending. If you had the new actor in the role at this point, if Timothy had come on board in this film, for example, at that point, you probably wouldn't have had this ending. But you've got to acknowledge the fact that we've got Roger on the go, and it's good. And I love the fact that all of Roger's movies up to this point end in the same way, in the arms of a beautiful woman, with usually his boss at MI6 sort of shouting at him over the phone or whatever it is. But there we go. So that's For Your Eyes Only in a nutshell then, Chris. So lay it on me. Give me some thoughts. Your thoughts before the movie, your thoughts after the movie. Give it to me. Okay,
it is pretty positive. It's a lot more positive than I'd initially imagined. Like I mentioned in the last podcast, for me, For Your Eyes Only wasn't one that I'd see all that much, maybe because it was different to the Roger films. If I wanted a Roger film, I'd watch like a classic Roger film, so to speak. But you know what? I remember there being scenes that I enjoyed when I was young, but one or two things I wasn't quite sure about. But upon watching it again, I haven't seen it for a long time. The amount of banging scenes in this film, normally you'll list one or two, maybe three or four in certain films. We mentioned it, that pre-titles I really like. I think that's a cracking pre-titles. That drive in the country, seeing the Lotus again, the ski chase is brilliant. That whole ending with the the rock climbing and the World War II atmosphere is brilliant. The warehouse scene is so good. That whole attack is brilliant. There's just so many cool bits. I think for me, if I had to look at weaknesses, I would potentially say that in terms of the villains, the main villains and the henchmen, they're not the most memorable. They're not the ones you'd see on the poster, or your average person in the street would know about. I think the score sometimes didn't work. I think there are certain cues which I love, and there are certain cues which I'm definitely not 100% sure about. But there's a lot to enjoy with this film, a lot more than I had remembered. Strangely,
I'm exactly the same on that. I think this was a film that I would rarely put on, especially when I had the long break from it. But the more I think about it, the more I think, man, this is almost like for the casual Bond fan or the casual movie-going public, it's almost like the forgotten classic in the sense that obviously we as hardcore fans all know it sort of, inside out. But for those people who are sort of the more casual fans and stuff, I feel like there's so much in this film that should be considered iconic, but just for whatever reason doesn't get the attention of the others.
Yeah.
With the exception, I would say, of the Bond in the archway shooting Locke in the car and the kicking off the cliff. That is in all the montages.
Yeah.
But like that ski chase is phenomenal. It's brilliant. The helicopter work in the pre-titles is amazing. It's brilliant. That climbing sequence, man, is second to none, man. That's the best climbing sequence ever, I think, as far as I'm concerned. Like, especially with that drop, it's incredible. Yeah. There's so much about this, the Citroen chase. Like, there's so much in this that's really top drawer Bond. And I think for me, and this is what I always hoped from the beginning, is that I would discover some new little parts of Bond that I hadn't perhaps given too much attention to, that will like freshen it up for me and find some new stuff to explore. And I think that's what this movie's done for me now, because the more I think about it, the more I just want to actually just go and watch it again and experience it again. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think it doesn't, by the sounds of it, you won't think this, but do you think there's a possibility that this film is more like a collection of great scenes rather than a story that works throughout?
I think it could have easily been that. Like, because you've literally got some scenes pilfered from different Fleming stories boxed in together. And it could have been that, just like an excuse to go from one to the other. But I feel like there's a perfect smooth arc that goes through the whole thing that links it all in together. It just makes sense to me, you know?
Do you know what's interesting though? Like, I'm after saying how much I've enjoyed watching it, and I have, and all the classic scenes are amazing. The killer question is, how does it compare to your other Rogers and the other Bonds? Now, it's hard because it's so hard because you're watching it and okay, there's great things, but is there something that's still missing from it when it's compared to the other Rogers or not? For me, it might still be something missing, and I don't know what it is because I've just listed a load of scenes that I love. But if I'm comparing it to Live and Let Die, I can't. If I'm comparing it to Spy, I can't. You know, I don't know. Or do you think that for you, this has completely changed the ball game?
Do you know what it is? I know exactly what you mean. And I think what it is for me is that you look at Spy Who Loved Me and you've got the amazing submarine sequence and all that kind of iconic stuff, but it's totally over the top in it. You know, it's a proper over the top, as is Moonraker, as is kind of like all the Roger movies up to this point are like proper over the top, exaggerated adventures, right? And that is what Roger's signature thing is, and that's absolutely fine, and I love him for it, right? I think you almost can't really compare this one to the previous four because it is so different in tone. It's so, you could almost take For Your Eyes Only and have it as a standalone thriller that would, you know, if you took the Bond angle out of it, it could almost be a standalone Cold War thriller story. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, you know, with some of the, like, you couldn't, for example, have some random character bombing around in a submarine car. Do you know what I mean? That just wouldn't be right, would it? You know who deserves that sequence. Whereas for this, I think it's just so different. I feel like you almost have two categories of Roger. You've got Man with Golden Gun to Moonraker, and you've got For Your Eyes Only to A View to a Kill. And those last three are almost like a separate trilogy to the other ones, as far as I'm concerned. And I know obviously there's your moments in them, but like I feel like you can't really compare the last three with the first four. I don't know. What do you think?
It's strange, isn't it? I think this film, obviously we've mentioned it loads, but it's got way more in sync with From Russia and Majesties than probably any of the other films, hasn't it? It's taken quite liberally sort of things from both of those in a good way. But I think you're right. I think the way that I'm thinking about it is I've always had the Rogers, you know, and like I was when I was young, maybe that's why. Like, for instance, if Tim had done this film or you know, if, you know, Sean had done this film or something, would it be more within line of their type of films? Obviously Tim's, it would be a bit more in line with his type of films, but for me, it is a great film, and it's one that I want to watch again as well. I've definitely got that feeling, so it definitely does flick my switch in a positive way. But I think you're right. I just think it's almost impossible to compare to the other Rogers. It's difficult, isn't it?
It is so different to Spy or Golden Gun or Live and Let Die that I feel like you'd be doing it a disservice by saying, like, for me, like I said at the beginning, as we go through these reviews, for me, in terms of my favourites, it starts at the beginning and it just, in terms of my favourite is Live and Let Die, and then with each successive film, that's how I rank them. So like Man with the Golden Gun will be 2, Spy would be 3, and so on.
Yeah.
But I feel like with this one, there's too much good in there to rank this as the 5th film for me with Roger. And I don't know, I feel like there's early Roger and the late Roger period, and I feel like they deserve their own categories for me, I think.
Yeah. Well, the other sort of thing that I've come to notice is that as we've been doing these reviews, I'd prefer. It's almost like we were saying with the Bonds, the actual actors. You know, you've always got potentially your favourite, but you love them all. Well, not everyone does, but for me personally, and I know you're the same. Each one of the actors have got something that is great about them, and you know, we do love them all. And I think the films are exactly the same. There are some that are definite favourites, and you know, out of the others, there are some where they've each got something good within them. And I think, you know, we mentioned Diamonds recently. Like before, you know, a lot of people see it as a weak film, and parts of it are, but it's sometimes it's a really good fun watch if that's what you want. Yeah. And I think in this instance, with For Your Eyes Only, if you want a good cold hard thriller, but you've seen From Russia and Majesties 100 times, stick this on and you'll still get that type of feel, won't you? Yeah. You'll get that type of film. So I think I'd rather just not rank Bond films and just say I love them all. It just completely depends on what mood you're in and what you want to see. And that is, whatever mood you're in, that's a Bond you want to watch. But, you know, that's not derogatory to any of the other Bonds because they're all good at their own specific times, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough one, man. If we do an episode where we literally rank all the films, it's going to be almost impossible, and we will just be contradicting ourselves throughout the whole process because we're making excuses. I don't think I can. I don't think it's possible. I think
a few years ago I would have given it a go, and I know we had to for our website. But looking back, anything that you see, you'd always want to ramp up a place or two, wouldn't you? So yeah, I don't like it anymore.
So I don't like this game. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris. So with all that said, do you know what it's time for now?
It's been a long time. It's been a long time.
Do you know what? I look back on the list of episodes, and the last Roger movie that we reviewed was literally 5 months ago. Can you believe it?
What?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Let me have a look on the old iTunes. The Moonraker review came out, because obviously it was a two-parter. Yeah. Moonraker came out, part 1 came out on the 28th of August, and part 2 came out on the 3rd of September. So it's been that long since we've got cracking.
What have we been
Roger.
doing?
Just wasting time, obviously. Anyway, it is time for Bond Facts!
Flames, explosion, fire, Bond Facts.
There it is. Oh, it feels good to get that out, man.
It does. Lovely. Yeah. Very nice. Okay, so we've got quite a few Bond Facts. Obviously, sometimes I'd split them over the two reviews, part 1 and part 2, but as we didn't have any last time, I'm going to put them all into this one, and there are quite a few interesting ones. Okay, so Bond Fact number 1. In fact, we mentioned on the on a previous podcast that the German translation of For Your Eyes Only is
On a Deadly Mission,
which is pretty cool. Now, the Swedish version is called From a Lethal Viewpoint, which is quite interesting and a bit similar to A View to a Kill, From a Lethal Viewpoint, but I thought that was quite an interesting one. Bond fact number 2, there is an early intention to place a scene with Bond around the Parthenon. Obviously, previously we had him visiting the Roman cistern in Russia and obviously the pyramids in Spy. But they couldn't get filming permission, so they couldn't go there. But that would have been quite cool, seeing Bond in the Parthenon. And I'm sure that's a scene in Colonel Son as well, isn't it? When he meets that girl. So they're obviously going to take a bit from that. So it was a bit of a shame that didn't happen.
Where he meets Ariadne, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. So that would have been quite cool. But fact number 3, John Glenn indicated that for a time it was considered to bring back the character of Jaws for a third time, but the idea was ultimately dropped as they thought it didn't fit with the tone of the film. Now, I'm very glad that they chose not to bring Jaws back. What do you think?
Yeah, that would have been really weird unless they sort of reimagined Jaws a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
That would have been weird in this film for sure, yeah.
Definitely. Bomb fact number 4, Melina derives from the Greek word for honey. So it's a bit of a subtle homage to Honey Rider. So
Very
Melina
nice.
means honey, which is quite cool. Carol Bouquet was dubbed throughout the film, although she dubbed herself in the French version, which must have been weird.
Yeah, that's funny, isn't it? That's another one, man. That's just incredible dubbage. I never knew that she was dubbed. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's a good one, that one. In addition, actually, remember we mentioned Robert Wrighty dubbing the Blofeld character in the pre-title sequence. He also He also dubbed Luigi Ferrara and Eric Kriegler as well.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's quite interesting.
He's a talented dude, man.
Yeah,
that's good
definitely.
stuff.
Okay, so bomb fact number 7. To enter the identigraph room, Q enters a 5-digit code, which are the first 5 notes to the chorus in Nobody Does It Better. And Bond responds by entering the last 2 notes. So that's quite cool, isn't it?
Very
Did you
nice.
notice that one?
I didn't notice that. I'm going to have to look out for that on my next viewage. Yeah.
Definitely. Bomb fact number 8. According to Lynn Holly Johnson, and apparently Roger Moore in his autobiography, the character of Bibi Dahl was played as a 16-year-old. So I know in the last podcast we were like, how old is she? 20, 22? Yeah, it should be all right. But 16, I think we'd probably have to...
you would have to draw the line there. Yeah,
I think so, definitely. Bond fact number 9. Stuntman Paolo Rigoni actually died during filming. So this was on the bobsled chase, and apparently he fell out of one of the bobsleds and got run over and died. I think that was the first time that anyone's died. So it's a bit. He was only 23 as well. It's a bit harsh, wasn't it? Yeah. Which was very bad. Bomb fact number 10. In another incident, not as obviously fatal, Topol got injured in the warehouse scene. When they're firing guns, there's a blank and it went into just next to his eye, really close to his eye, and basically it was debris from a blank, because sometimes it's still far out, and it was bleeding all over the place. And before John Glenn had time to say cut, apparently Cubby Broccoli, he was on set at the time, ran straight on, grabbed Topol and ran with him to the on-set doctor. And Cubby's an old guy and quite a big guy, and Topol was saying that that it's no wonder that everyone loved Cubby so much, is he obviously had looked after everyone, and obviously Topol was good in the end, which is pretty cool. Next bomb fact: like many henchmen before and after him, Locke doesn't utter a perceivable line in the film, although we do see him talk to on the phone when he's inside his car. So that's happened quite a lot, hasn't it, before?
Yeah, that's the sort of... to be a decent henchman, you're not really allowed to say anything or very much at all.
Or very much. But next bomb fact number 11. With the production choosing against using M in the film, a lot of his dialogue was split between other characters, including obviously the Chief of Staff, Defence Minister and Q. Now, interestingly, this is the part that I didn't know about. That Q's scene with Bond in the confession box was originally envisaged as being M in the confession box, not Q. Now, what do you think of that? Because I think it equally would have worked with M, but it probably would have been a longer scene with more information. But it would have been such you would have missed out on that magic of that Q scene. That's
the thing. I don't think it would have felt right with them. I feel like because there's such a sort of rivalry, not rivalry, but there's such a relationship between Q and Bond, especially Roger's Bond, where they're just like Q is just so weary of his antics. Do you know what I mean? I feel like that, that's putting it mildly, is such a perfect line for that relationship. I feel like seeing M in that box would have been a bit too comical, I think. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, you're probably right. So it's quite good in a way that didn't happen. And final bomb fact then. So Rog suffered from vertigo, and while he was doing some of the climbing sequences, he took a combination of Valium and tall glasses of beer, which I think most normal people probably would as well. So there we go.
Very
Bomb facts
nice
for the day.
Well done, Chris. There were some wonderful Bond facts. I learned a lot. Good stuff. Next up, it's time for us to answer our Bond trivia questions of today, isn't it, Chris? Are you excited about that?
I am indeed. Excited and nervous.
All right, cool. So I asked the first question of the day, so I will retort my question. I'm using all the wrong words today. I will retort my question and see if you can deliver the answer, which I know you probably can. So my question of the day is, Mr. Christopher Wright, according to Bond, what must you do before setting out for revenge?
I would say, and it's not a cup of tea. It's definitely not a cup of tea.
It's not tea and biscuits, no.
Run a hot bath.
No.
But
close.
Close, okay. Run a cold bath.
No.
Bugger. I think you're going to have to tell me.
Before setting out on revenge, you first dig 2 graves.
2 graves. There we go.
Yeah.
Cool. And it's a good Chinese... In fact, that's based on a real Chinese proverb made by Confucius. It's quite interesting.
Good knowledge.
Yeah. So, and it's one to stand by as well, I guess.
Can you name another Chinese proverb that Bond remembers?
Yeah. What, in the same film?
No,
Or in another one?
in another Bond film.
I know a Japanese one.
Oh, bollocks. Look at me being racist. Shit. All right, damn it. An old proverb then, that'll do.
Is it bird never makes nest in bear tree?
It is. Good stuff. Damn it.
Cool. That was a good one. Okay, on to my Bond trivia question. Now, this one is a bit of a toughie. For eagle-eyed people out there, you might have noticed, but obviously Neptune is the name of the 2-man sub that Bond and Melina use. But, Tom Sears, do you know the name of the 1-man sub that attacks them?
Can I ask for a clue? What is the first letter of it?
The first letter is M for
Is it
mother.
Medusa?
Oh, no, it's not. But it is also the name of an animal. So there's an animal that has 2 names, and this is the second word within that name, and it begins with M, and it's kind of like a sticky animal. And when I mean sticky, I mean it looks a bit like a stick insect, but it's not.
A sticky animal.
I'm just throwing you away, of course.
Yeah.
It's called mantis.
Of course it is.
What I should have said is it rhymes with Atlantis.
It does, yeah, damn it.
Yeah.
I like the sticky
Mantis.
animal bit though. But I like the fact that you meant it as it looked like a stick as opposed to sticky to touch. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Good work, the mantis indeed. Yeah, there it is.
So well done. Big congrats to anyone who got that, because that is a tricky one. Very tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up, Chris, it's time for
Bond. James Bond.
That was an extra aggressive one today. I liked
it was a little bit,
good.
maybe because it's a cold-hearted film. I added a bit more aggression.
There you go. Nice. So my quote was last week, wasn't it? If you remember correctly, Chris.
Tricky one as well.
And I'm intrigued to see whether you've got this one. So I'm going to perform it for you again. My quote from last week was this: "Eliminate him."
Sounds like Dr. Evil. It's nicer. Now I've been having trouble with this because it definitely didn't clock straight away last time, and I'm trying to rack my brain to think of when something like that was said. And I know I can think of one which I know it won't be, which I'll say anyway, but I don't think it is, from The Living Daylights, when Koskov says they'll send their best man in to eliminate him. But I don't think it's that, because it definitely didn't sound like Koskov.
No.
Or did it sound like Koskov?
Well, actually, Chris, it was that. So
was
you
it?
got it.
Oh,
so
no.
my performance obviously wasn't up to snuff because you didn't think it was. But
Well, I thought it was
is,
more like the other one that I
Which
had
one?
in mind. There is one from You Only Live Twice. This was the first one that came to mind when Osato says to Blofeld, "I gave number 11 the strictest orders to eliminate him." And I thought that was what you were going for. Osato's eliminate him. Sorry, that was my bad.
No worries. It was Koskov if I remember correctly, just after this where you see Necros having a little swim in his budgie smugglers, and they're sitting around the table outside. It's during that sequence there. But
can you do it again? No, sorry, because I'm doing you a disservice now because I think it was probably better than it's because I had the other one in my head. Go on, go for it.
Eliminate him.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. No, that definitely is Koskov. Sorry. I think I got so excited by Osato that I couldn't get that one out of my head. But yeah, brilliant stuff. Okay. So, would you like to hear my quote for this week, Tom?
I would.
Okay, this one I think you'll probably get straight away, actually. Well, it depends on my delivery. If my delivery's shit, you might not. So, okay, here it is. Warn me.
Can I hear that again, please?
Okay. Here we go. Warn me.
Warn me.
Yeah, it's not... All right, let's see if I can nail it again. Wait, let me think. I've got. Why do I always have to close my eyes when I do it? Give me a second. Okay. Warn me? No. Yeah, something like that.
Is it or not?
No, it is that. I'm just trying to get the delivery right. I don't think I'm quite on it. Wait a minute.
Warn me.
Oh, okay. I might have it here. Let's try this. Oh, it's so hard. Warn me?
Do you know?
What?
It reminds me a little bit of Out There.
Yeah.
but I know that's not it.
No, it's yeah, no, it needs to be a bit more. Okay, let's try that. Sorry. Warn me. No, that sounds like Govinder still. It's not like that. Sorry. I'll bust out a good one. I'll bust out a better version of it. Right. Okay, last time. Okay. Warn me? No, that's still not right, is it?
Well, I tell you what, I've got Warn Me, and I
You've
know
got
it's
the
not
worst.
Govinda, so I've got enough to go on. And then next time you can practice it a bit more, maybe, if I don't get it. And then then we'll get cracking on that. So
wicked.
Good stuff.
All right. Sounds
cool.
Good.
So obviously that quote will be answered in our next episode. So you know what we have next, Chris? We have something very special. We have obviously the return of Tommy Trivia, which is our new little round where you quiz me on the 007 Trivial Pursuit set, which is lots of fun. But we happened to mention last time that we needed a theme tune for it because we didn't have one.
We did.
And good old Dan Gale, who composed our Guess the Music Q and Bond Celebrity Deathmatch, he's only gone and served one up for us. Like on short notice, just, you know, we threw out the challenge and he took it up and delivered. So let's hear the new Tommy Trivia intro music.
Who wrote the score for Live and Let Die? Who played Helga Brandt and how did she die? Who wants to stockpile the water in Bolivia? It's Tommy Trivia.
Excellent work from Dan there. Lovely.
Nice one.
So,
cheers, Dan.
So lay it on me then. What questions have you got for me this week?
Okay, so I'm just going to make sure I get the right one. Okay, we have... Now, this time, as usual, you get to start with the first question. You get to choose what one, and then we'll go through them. Now, you're not allowed the films, because you started with that last time.
Right.
So, we've got casting characters, vehicles, gadgets and weapons, locations, or crew and behind the scenes.
Weapons.
Oh, weapons it is. Okay. So, gadgets and weapons are... Who kills Vesper Lind?
Who kills Vesper Lind? She does.
She does indeed, yeah. She commits suicide, doesn't she? Locks herself in. So that's kind of like a trick question, really. What's the answer say? She locks herself inside a sinking building and drowns. So yes, I'll definitely give you that one.
There it is.
Okay, so the next one is locations. Now, can you tell me in which state is the real Fort Knox in?
That's Kentucky, isn't it?
It is!
Nice.
Good man! That's some good knowledge there. Excellent stuff. Okay, so on to crew and behind the scenes. In what year was The World Is Not Enough released?
1999.
Wow, on it like that! Didn't
Yeah.
even need hesitation. Excellent. Okay, on to casting characters. Who plays Octopus?
That would be good old Maud Adams.
Lovely. Lovely Maud Adams there. And finally, the films. What is Patricia Fearing's job at Shrublands?
I get. You'd call her like a therapist, I suppose, wouldn't you?
Yeah, physiotherapist, it says here, but I'll go with therapist, definitely. In fact, I've just seen one last question, which is vehicles, and funnily enough, it's from For Your Eyes Only.
Very nice.
What vehicle does Bond use to get away from Gonzalez's hideout?
From Gonzalez's hideout, that would be a Citroen 2CV.
It is, and do you know what they've given as the answer?
Go on.
The Lotus Esprit. I beg your pardon. What vehicle does Bond use to get to Gonzalez's hideout? So I did what you did last week, and I didn't even read the question right today.
There it is.
But I'll give that to you anyway. So you got all of those. Excellent stuff.
Lovely stuff.
Do you think these are too easy, Tom, or are you happy to keep going along?
I
with
think
these?
providing I listen and use my brain, then it's all right. But if I don't, then I run into problems. So
then
it depends
you trip up a bit.
what mood you catch me in at that particular point, I think. But there we go. So next up, it's time for... It's the music cue. So there we go. Now I remember you dished up a doozy on me last week, which I still have no idea what it's from. So yeah. So should we have a listen to that? What you dished up last time?
It was a bit of a sneaky one, but yeah, let's have a listen and see what people think. Well, what do you think then?
I've got no clue. I really don't have any clue what that is. You've completely doozied me, man. I don't know.
It is a tricky one, but I'm going to give you a bit of a hint and see what you think.
Go on.
It comes from a late Roger movie. Does that help at all?
Is it A View to a Kill?
Can you tell me a potential scene that is from?
I'm on the scent now. Let me think. Is it? Is it when he's at that little party and he uses the X-ray specs to look through the curtains?
It's not, but that is a very good guess. But okay, in that little music cue, what did you hear?
A violin. Oh, is it with the butterflies on the Eiffel Tower?
Yes! Good man.
There it is.
Superb.
Right, cool.
And that woman whistling with the butterflies. Yeah, that was a tricky one.
It makes perfect sense now. And I've actually dined in that restaurant. It was very nice. I loved it.
Excellent.
Very good stuff.
And
all right.
Well done to anyone that got that as well, because that was a bit of a tricky one. Now, the next one I've got coming up should be a bit of an easier one. I think you'll get the era or possibly the film quite easy-ish. But as to the scene, who knows? But okay, should we have a listen to the new one?
Let's do it.
Well, what do you think then?
All right. Well, I instantly know what film that is. That is I'm not going to mention it obviously, but that's an older one for sure.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to what scene, I have a fairly strong idea, but I feel like it could have been used in several different parts. So, yeah, I think I'm quietly confident with that one. I think.
Okay, good stuff. Well, I'll see what everyone else thinks next time as well. And again, let us know what you think it is on Facebook or on the website, and you'll find out next week if you're right, or the week after. Cool.
Good stuff. So to finish up today's episode, it's time for...
Bond Celebrity Deathmatch.
Okay, so last time we threw this one out to the JBR family, didn't we? It was Largo versus Xenia, and we couldn't quite decide. We thought Largo's going to come out on top there. He's going to win. But we couldn't quite decide how that was going to happen. So we threw that out to the JBR family. And did we get any responses, Chris?
We did indeed. Now, here are the two matchups. There they are together. Now, in fact, we did have one or two people who actually thought On the Top might sort of win over Largo, although they didn't sort of come up with a good excuse. But the majority of people were like happy, yet Largo wins. And in terms of how he wins, I've got a couple of things here. There's an answer from Ollie Emerson, and he said they're on the deck of the Disco Volante. Xenia gets her thighs around Largo in an attempt to kill him, but the friction of her rubbing causes one of Largo's cigars to catch fire in his pocket, burning Xenia, who flies off in pain, falling backwards into a harpoon. So I think that's quite a realistic
Very
one.
plausible, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So nice one, Ollie. Sheila James also sent one in. And she didn't even mention George Lazenby.
I was just going to say, man, did she not mention George in it? George.
Unbelievably, this is the first post that I've ever seen without any mention of George.
Good Lord.
And Sheila said, my scene is that Largo and Xenia are on a boat, again. She has him between her thighs, again, and they fall overboard. In the water, Largo is able to break free and get back on the boat before she is able to, and he harpoons her. So there are a couple of similarities there. Obviously, it looks like they culminate with Onatop being perforated with a harpoon. As to exactly where that harpoon penetrates, we'll leave that up to the listeners' imaginations.
Yeah.
And they can decide.
In the boobies,
themselves.
maybe.
In the boobies.
But now, I happen to notice that over on JamesBondRadio.com, there was a JBR listener who actually disagreed with this and thought Xenia should have won. That was good old Bjorn Magnusson left a comment, and it was an intelligent thought, so I thought I'd include it.
Yeah, definitely.
He says, nice to have you back. I disagree with Largo being in the final. He is a good leader, yes, but he is actually not a particularly good fighter. Most of the time, Largo just points with his hands and tells his henchmen to do the dirty work. What would he do without his crew? During the final boat fight, his crew members are more of a threat to Bond than Largo is. Largo throws 2 punches that don't seem to bother Bond. A moment later, he throws another 2 punches, but that is after one of his crew members helped him by locking Bond's arms behind his back. That is all Largo does during the boat fight before he gets killed. We know that Largo lives on a ship and that he isn't particularly good at detecting intruders on board. On the other hand, we know that Onatop has experience in operating on-board ships. She knows how to seduce Navy personnel and kill them during sex. She knows how to infiltrate a ship and secretly assassinate crew members. Onatop is good with guns and pretty good in close combat. She is not that good in fist fighting, but knows how to headbutt people. If she gets her thighs around you, she is deadly. She is also a skilled driver and helicopter pilot. How would Largo kill her? Throw into his shark pool? I guess the sharks would get a good squeeze from her thighs. If Largo uses his ice and heat to torture her, she would just enjoy it. Onatop is a better fighter in the air, on land and on ships. I can see so many ways in which Onatop could kill Largo, but the only environment where I feel Largo is a deadly opponent is underwater. Keep up the good work and congrats to Jaws on winning the deathmatch. What do you think about that?
I think he's underplayed Largo's cleverness. I think it's a very solid argument. I think I completely agree with him about the heat and ice. I think they'd both get off on it as much as each other. But I think he's not given enough kudos to Largo's ingenuity. This is the man that's come up with a big plan, and he's a big lad as well. He is strong. He's, okay, we mentioned about Xena and her thighs. He might be able to withhold that. He's not only, could she get her thighs around him for starters, because he's quite a big chap. He's solid though. And I think it is a reasonable argument, but I'd still be happy to go with Largo just because I think he's got more he's got more upstairs going on. He'd find some way around his adversary, I think. Why has it swayed it for you, or what do you think?
No, I think I'm still happy to go with Largo. I just thought that was a very good argument, absolutely. But so good on you, Bjorn, for giving us your thoughts there. Good stuff.
Thanks,
so that brings us into the grand final, isn't it? Months and months and months this tournament's been going on, and we're finally here in the grand final. So who have we got, Chris? Remind us.
So we have got one person that we definitely could have bet our houses that would be in the final. We have the steel-toothed giant, that is Jaws. And obviously we have the winner of semi-final part 2, who is Largo. Now, we did want the Oddjob Jaws matchup in the final. I still personally would opt for Oddjob over Jaws. I know I said that last time, but I definitely would. But we've got Jaws and we've got Largo. We kind of, we've already said previously who we think would win. Anyway, but let's forget about all that. Let's start afresh. Let's look at who we've got, and let's come up with some sort of situations where they might battle each other. Okay, so let's start with Jaws. Let's start with Jaws.
He's very tall and strong. He has metal teeth, Chris.
He does.
He likes to bite people. That's his modus operandi. He can pick up big bricks in Egypt. What else can he do? He can disguise himself in gigantic John Canoe Parade style parades.
Clown outfits.
Yes, he can do that. He can pick up vans by the rear part and stop them from driving away for a limited time at least. And he's genuinely not killable, really.
I think that's probably quite a good all-round description of him. Okay, so has he got any weaknesses, and if so, what are they?
I think the only weakness he could possibly have is Dolly, if she was part of the picture. Other than that, just the fact that he's kind of slow and probably not the sharpest tool in the box.
Yeah, I'd agree with those factors. Just very briefly, I wanted to mention something about Dolly, I saw one of the listeners write something on the Facebook page regarding how he always remembered Dolly as having braces when he was young, and he watched the film and saw she had nice white teeth. And I beg your pardon because I can't remember the name of the person who left the message, but he was absolutely convinced she'd always used to wear braces and have done some sort of digital thing to just see teeth, and that idea of obviously her having metal teeth or metal on her teeth and Jaws having teeth, put them together. Now, did you ever think she had braces or not?
No, I never remembered her having braces, but thinking about it...
It's a cool idea, isn't it?
It would have made so much sense if she had, because then that would have been like the thing that they bonded by. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I really wish they had done now. I don't remember it either, but it's such a nice romantic sort of thought that I think it would have been amazing if they had gone with it. It's a bit of a shame, really, but there we go. Sorry, I just thought I'd throw that in there because I really liked it. But okay, so Jaws, so we said potential weaknesses, maybe Dolly, a bit slow and maybe a bit dim. Right, let's go on to Largo then. Strengths and weaknesses, what have we got?
He's very cold-blooded. He's good at cutting air pipes underneath the water, which I still feel like Jaws would be all right with. He can
breathe underwater.
Yeah, he can. He does the torture with the heat and the cold. He has a boat that detaches, Chris, so it's like a speedboat and leaves the back part behind.
A hydrofoil.
Yes, nice. I would say the one area he outranks Jaws on is intellect.
Yes, I would have to agree
with
that.
Yes, weaknesses: lack of depth perception, obviously.
Yeah,
and the fact that he's just nowhere near strong enough compared to Jaws.
Yeah, no, definitely not. If you're looking at also like Jaws, we know that he can kill sharks. This Jaws can kill sharks. So if he fell into Largo shark pool, it wouldn't matter. He'd just like bite one, bite the next. He'd be fine. And I think that would be Largo's plan, sort of scuppered. I think he'd use his intellect to draw Jaws into the sort of swimming pool, and then let the sharks in, and Jaws would just like.
That's how it would go down. Largo would be like, "Oh, I'm being all devious now. I'm going to get him in that pool, and then that's going to be the end of him." And he gets him in the pool, right? And then the sharks come along. Jaws just bear hugs it and bites it, takes down the shark. Largo's there going, "Oh shit. Yeah."
And then Jaws basically gets out all wet, like he is in Moonraker, and he picks up Largo by his head, and then bites him.
Just bites him. Yeah. I think that's fairly cut and dry, isn't it? I don't think there's much debate to be had on this one, to be honest. We don't really need to throw this one out to the JBR family.
No, I think not. I think valiant effort though. Largo getting all the way to the final. I know we didn't think he'd be there, and a lot of others might not think he deserves to be there, but still, he definitely put up a good fight. So well done to Largo. I think congrats to Xena and Oddjob as well for getting to the semis. Mm-hmm. But we have to say the winner of James Bond Celebrity Deathmatch is Jaws.
There he is. Good stuff. Good old Richard Keel.
Yeah,
good
well
man.
Done.
I think on some level it was always going to be that, but it was good to go through the process and see how he got there for sure.
Definitely. And also, I mean, it's been a lot of fun coming up with all the situations, all the battling, all this, that and the other. Obviously, we've had a lot of input from the listeners, which has been great. So we'll have to come up with a new round for the next podcast, which we're not going to mention anything about now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think maybe give the death match a few weeks rest, and then we'll come up with a new concept. Which must be said, we have to extend our thanks to Michael Kerwin, who actually came up with the first idea. Do you remember he sent us in a message saying, "Who do we think we would win out of Irma Bunt or Rosa Klebb?" And that sort of spawned the whole celebrity death match idea. So good on you for that, Michael. Excellent work. You've given us hours of entertainment since that idea kind of cropped up. So good on you, man. We salute you.
Cheers, Michael. Nicely done.
Good stuff. All right, then. So that rounds out today's episode of James Bond Radio. That's For Your Eyes Only in the bag. We've only got 2 more Roger movies to get through, Chris.
Wow.
I'm feeling a little bit sad about that because I love me some Rog.
I am as well, but the fact I still can't believe Moonraker was back in August and September. That's crazy. But I'm sure that we'll get Octopussy and A View to a Kill in a lot sooner than that time span. Obviously, we had Spectre going on and all that sort of shenanigans and stuff, so we'll definitely change. But before, obviously, we get to that in future podcasts, definitely for the next podcast, what we'd love to hear is all of your reviews of For Your Eyes Only. You know, we've had our say, what we think, what we like, and what we're not sure about. What we really want is to hear what you guys and girls think. What scenes do you like? You know, what characters do you like? If you don't like it at all, what aspects you enjoy. You know, if you go to our website, jamesbondradio.com, leave a voicemail with a little button on the side. You've only got 90 seconds, and they tick down very quickly, don't they, Tom? You've got to be quick to get all your info out there. But it'd be really good to listen to what everyone thinks of For Your Eyes Only, and then we'll stitch them all together and put them out.
Absolutely. So provided we get enough of those, our next episode will be the listener takeover again with 90-second reviews of For Your Eyes Only. If we don't get enough, then we'll do something else.
What we'll do, no, if we don't get enough, you and I will just keep doing it, but do it in different voices, and we'll be different characters.
That sounds good. Maybe that guy who did the amazing Timothy Dalton impression will call back and do that.
I'll do my robot voice as well.
Give us a kiss! Give us a kiss! That was brilliant. Loved it. All right.
It was 8 tactiles on cells. 8 tactiles on cells.
So, there we go. So we will be back in 2 weeks as per usual. Chris, when you're listening to this, will probably be bombing down some mountain somewhere in France with His Majesty's music pumping in his ears.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll just be sitting on a tree stump somewhere waiting for him to get back, like Forrest Gump at the end of that film.
Nice.
Because I've got nothing else to do. So until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And James Bond Radio will return with, hopefully, the listener takeover episode with all your 90-second reviews. So make sure you come over to jamesbondradio.com, click the button on the right-hand side and leave us your review. And then we will see you in the next episode. All right, then. Take care. We'll see you next time.
See you in 2 weeks' time, everyone.
Bye. Bye.